The Azteca Stadium, already the only stadium in World Cup history to host the opening ceremony and opening match of the finals twice, is going to do it for the third time in just a few hours' time as I'm recording this on Thursday, the 11th of June. Now, okay, I know what you're saying, jump right in, but Alec, what about 1934? What about 1934? The San Siro hosted one of the opening games, and then it hosted the opening game and the opening ceremony, Italia 90 as well. San Siro hosted one of 8 opening games that kicked off at the same time. They're just a straight knockouts format for the 1934, the second World Cup ever played, that was hosted by Mussolini in Italy. Imagine a fascist dictatorship hosting a World Cup. Who'd have thought that kind of thing was possible? Thank God it doesn't happen these days. I'm being sarcastic. But they had 8 games kicking off at exactly the same time. The very first round, the opening ceremony, if there was going to be one, was bound to be in Rome, where I think Italy were playing. I can't remember who Italy were actually playing. Oh, the USA. I think it was scalping the USA 7-1 in their opening game, and it was in the PNF Stadium, which became the Flaminio Stadium on the same site. It's the stadium that the Italy rugby union team would play Scotland sometimes. Lazio and Roma moved there when the Olimpico was getting done up for the 1990 World Cup, but that was originally the PNF Stadium, standing for Partita Nacionalista Fascista, National Fascist Party Stadium. And I've been in it. It wasn't a game on it at the time, but I've walked about it when I went to Rome about 1999. But that I would imagine, Italy played their game that day in that stadium. I would imagine that's where they'd have any kind of opening ceremony. So okay, the San Siro did kick off. They'd have the first game, but it was the joint first game. It was Switzerland, Netherlands. Don't know the score in that game. I can't remember who won that one in the 1934 World Cup, but 1990 was a proper opening game. So what I'm trying to say is, this is the problem with the World Cup. You see, I mean, like, they changed the format, and there's just wee moments where you can't just quite say the whole World Cup. You can't take in the whole World Cup, and at the stats and that, you've got to have these asterisks above them. For example, the 1930 World Cup finals, the first ever World Cup finals, that's the only one. That's the only World Cup finals where they didn't have a third, fourth place playoff. I know a lot of folk don't think there's any point to the third, fourth place playoff, but to find out if you're third or fourth best in the world, that's a great thing. I love the third, fourth place playoff, the bronze medal game, the third place game, whatever you want to call it, the 2 losing semi-finalists. Didn't have that in the 1930 World Cup. You're like, oh, that's all right. Whoever get horsed by the most goals, they're fourth. Whoever lost their semi-final by a bit fewer goals than the other losing semi-finalists, they're obviously they're going to be third, and the one that get beat by the most is going to be fourth. They both get beat 6-1. USA and I think it was Yugoslavia, Argentina and Uruguay beat them. They played the first final 6-1. The 2 semi-finals were lost 6-1. So I can't even remember. Was it? I think it was Argentina that beat USA, so does that make Yugoslavia, because they lost 6-1 to the winners of the World Cup, are they effectively third? Anyway, but you can't, that's annoying, because you can't say who was third in that World Cup. Just first, second, there's wee things like that will happen. There will be mistakes in this podcast. Just like there's been mistakes in Scotland's World Cup history. But Mexico, the Azteca, here comes the Azteca, turn it up. It's the stadium gangster, turn it up. There's going to be cringeworthy stuff like that as well. Going out to my demographic, my people in my age range that are watching this podcast. But the Azteca is the stadium gangster, only one to host the opening game 3 times. It's not going to get to host the final for a third time in this World Cup, which is criminal, because it's the most the most soccer storied stadium featuring in these World Cup finals. But the first time, the 1970 Mexico World Cup, the opening game was Mexico against USSR in front of 107,000 something, 107 odd thousand in the Azteca, and it was 0-0. And the next time, because 1986 World Cup, due to go to Colombia, but there's an earthquake in Colombia, so Mexico got it again. The opening game in the Azteca, they'd change the format. It used to be the hosts would kick off the opening game of the World Cup, and then they would go through wee spells, but it's the holders. The holders are kicking off the game. That's more usual. So it was Italy and Alessandro Altobelli who'd scored the Italy's third goal in the 1982 final. He scores the first goal in the 1986 finals. That's quite appropriate in that game against Bulgaria, but Bulgaria equalised late on. It was 1 each in front of 96,000, 96, 97,000, just under the 100,000 mark, that crowd. So now the Azteca's capacity has been reduced to 87,000. So as the crowds are getting smaller in the opening game played at the Azteca for each World Cup that it hosts, the score will get bigger, but it's always a draw. So I'm predicting 2 each. I'm predicting 2 each tonight on that kind of tenuous basis alone. It's going to be South Africa 2 against Mexico. They're scoring 2. Mexico, the hosts, are the co-hosts in this World Cup. So it's every time they play, and it's a rematch. I've not looked into this one. It's the first ever rematch of an opening game opposition, because of course 2010 World Cup in South Africa, it opened up with South Africa. Did they beat Mexico 3-1? I think, was it 1 each? I can't actually remember what the score was. The 2010 World Cup, as you get older, it gets harder to remember these things. But it was Mexico against South Africa. South Africa, the hosts, against Mexico, was the first game of the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. And now here we have the 2026. It's Mexico, South Africa. Again, Mexico, of course, also conceded the first goal ever in the World Cup. Mexico played in the first ever game played in the World Cup finals, although there was actually 2 kicked off at the same time. The first ever World Cup matches, there were no qualifiers for 1930 because there were so few teams able to make it, so few countries kind of interested. So it just went straight to the finals in Uruguay, 1930 in Montevideo, and Mexico played France, and France won 4-1, and Lucien Laurent of France scored after 19 minutes. That was the first goal scored in that World Cup. But in the very same day, in the very same city, all the games were staged in Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay, USA played Belgium. Kicked off at exactly the same time, and the USA scored 4 minutes later, the 23rd minute, a guy called Bartholomew McGee, who was born in Edinburgh. He scored for the USA in their 3-0 win, the first goal in their 3-0 win over Belgium in the 2 games that kicked off at the same time, the first 2 games ever played in the FIFA World Cup competition at any level, for the men's international teams anyway. And he scored, and he was born in Edinburgh. His dad, James McGee, had been manager of Hearts, and he wasn't very popular because he actually played for Hibs. In fact, he was one of the guys who deserted Hibs in 1888. This is James McGee, who was born in Lugar, in Ayrshire, down there. Now they're the poor relations in that whole kind of Glenafton, Auchinleck, Cumnock area, Lugar Boswell. And folk might think Lugar Boswell, it should be James Boswell, the acolyte of Dr. Johnson, should be the reason that in Lugar Boswell, Thistle are most famous, actually. But it's, in football terms, they're just the poor relations and the heavy hitters in the Scottish junior scene down there. But Lugar, of course, in Ayrshire, and that's where he came from. That's where James McGee, father of the second scorer by 4 minutes, the second ever scorer of a World Cup goal. He came from Lugar down in Ayrshire, and he moved to Edinburgh to play for Hibs. And then when everybody deserted Hibs to go to Celtic, he was one of the players that went in 1888. But I was talking about the Rosebery colours, the last podcast I did, also far too long, also rambling like this one. I was talking about the Rosebery colours, the tradition of the Scotland away kit, the 5th Earl of Rosebery, who was the honorary president of the SFA, and Hearts was a Rosebery Cup. Is that Rosebery Shields? Pardon my ignorance, east of Scotland people listening to this, but this is something that the Edinburgh teams, not like St Bernard's, as well as Hearts and Hibs would compete for back in the day. And in the Rosebery Cup game, I think it was against Hearts, he was part of the Scottish Cup. This James McGee was part of the first Hibs team to win the Scottish Cup, and he'd also scored in the Rosebery Cup final 5 goals in the first 25 minutes. James McGee against Hearts for Hibs, quite an amazing feat. And Rosebery colour, it just keeps coming back, this away kit that Scotland are wearing. And there was 1 year, I was reading about this in Wikipedia, it said 1 year the Rosebery Cup, they decked out, was it 1930s, I think, because they invited Motherwell to take part, because Motherwell had just won the league in Scotland in 1932, it must have been 32-33 or the end of the 31-32 season, and they decked out the whole of Tynecastle in primrose yellow and pink in honour of Lord Rosebery, the Earl of Rosebery, who just died like 3 years earlier. So I'm sitting in last night, and I'm having dinner, and I realised my wife, I'll get dinner tonight, and she went to Asda, and she'd go enchiladas, enchilada kit. And she's made it, it's like, oh, you're getting enchiladas. And she's like, what? Is enchiladas it's Mexico are kicking after us? She's, for fuck's sake. Things not even fucking started yet, and I've got to listen to this pish already. It's bad enough during the normal season when you keep talking about how Rangers lost because you hung up the towels the wrong way in the spare room. Now I'm going to have to listen to this kind of crap for 5 fucking weeks this time, because this tournament's going an extra week longer. I thought, I'll maybe just go and next door and do prepare a wee podcast. Just you do that. And I was kind of skulking away, and she went, "Hey." So I nipped back in and said, what is it, dear? She goes, "Guess what's for tea tomorrow night?" And on Thursday night, I said, "No, vuvuzela and chips." Vuvuzela, the South Africans did the vuvuzelas in 2010, and everybody, you're racist, were saying, well, that's a pain in the arse. That's the black folk bringing these things to stadiums. That's what they're like. They're not interested in football. They just want to make a whole lot of noise, And then folk like me, kind of lefties, going, that's their culture. You're insulting their culture. That's absolutely shocking racism there. Turned out they just taken to these things were brand new. It wasn't part of culture or anything like that. They just folk were taking these things along to the stadium. But if you go to 1974, any highlights in 1974 World Cup finals in West Germany, and just, they're all over YouTube just now. That's all I've been watching for the past week, is highlights of games in the 1974 World Cup finals in West Germany. It's worse. All the games, all you can hear is vuvuzela effect, like some sort of horns, I don't know if it's klaxons or whatever, but that's all it is. All the games, especially Germany games, it's absolutely murder. And so this, people just making these assumptions, racist stuff. Now, there's going to be a lot of mistakes, I say, and it's a podcast about mistakes, a podcast about patterns as well. Gianni Infantino. Gianni Infantino sounds a lot better than Infantino is a fanny. Infantino is a fanny. It feels as if that could have been done a lot better, that flag in the stadium in New Jersey there last Saturday. But Scottish banter, the pattern. What you want to do, right? Just go Gianni across the top of the flag, then get a picture of Isa for chewing the game, or the still fat thing. Get that, get her in there, and then below that, Fanny. That'd been a lot more subtle, a lot better, although, of course, we get the Roseberry colours. The women's team are wearing them, that beautiful version of the Roseberry colours they were wearing against Israel when they're scalping Israel in the Women's World Cup qualifiers the other night. So folk might think, again, folk think that strips sexism because of the pink, but it's actually the Roseberry colours. It was a bloke that... It gave Ezekiel his racing colours. I explained that in the previous pod if you didn't know that already. So I suppose if they just saw as a picture of a woman, they would notice Isa for chewing the game thing. So they would think that it's being sexist just with fanny underneath it. But just apostrophe S, Gianni's a fanny. Just do that. That'd been a lot more subtle, but I've no. It's a podcast about mistakes, a podcast about things that have gone wrong. I'm going to be lucky to get it up in time for kick-off in the opening game of this World Cup. I'm going to have to talk about Rangers stuff as well. I'm going to talk a lot about mistakes I've made in previous pods, as I always do. But timestamp, it's timestamp, folks. Go down the bottom. You know how the timestamps work. You've been on YouTube before. If you haven't, you go down the bottom of the screen here, and the wee red line along the bottom that tells you what time you're at. How much this podcast has been, how long it's been going for. You have a wee look at that, and you can just, if it gets dotted, after an hour or so after I've put the podcast up, it will start to break into kind of wee dotted lines, become a dotted line. It's little sections. You go into the description under the podcast there, and you hit on the more button. It'll bring up the whole description, and you can go into little various sections. I'm too busy trying to make clever puns for the titles of each section of the podcast for it to be in any way properly descriptive of what the content of each section of the podcast is. But you can navigate it. If you find this bit really boring, just jump on to the next bit and you'll get to understand how it works. Just because it's a 2.5 hour podcast doesn't mean to say you've got to just sit there and listen to the whole 2.5 hours. God forbid you should do that. It's a summer service. They're going to be intermittent, but football news keeps happening, so I end up having to catch up with hundreds of stuff. I'm going to do my snagging list, my snagging items from the previous podcast. I'm going to do that in the middle of this podcast, as I always do. But one snagging item, a snaggish item that I want to bring up straight away. It was a mistake, but I could maybe try to make an excuse about it. In the previous pods, was implying that Scotland had been champions of the world, de facto champions of the world. I had won the British home internationals in 1928 when the Wembley Wizards, the Scotland team, went into Wembley and won 5-1 with all 5 goals being scored by guys called Alex. Say no more. And they hadn't. This was supposed to be super appropriate because Lord Rosebery, he died in 1920. He died the following year, and I was making a point about how the really tortured relationship with FIFA, the home nation, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England. We invented football, this part of the world, our little islands here, and we thought we don't need to go and prove ourselves in some Mickey Mouse World Cup, which is just the rest of the world trying to prove that they can play football as well. So we did join and then left FIFA in the kind of 1910s and 1920s. That was the day after the Second World War. It was just like, aye, let's get together and just play football, the whole world. Let's do something nice. That we properly joined FIFA, and even then it was like they let us use the home internationals as a qualifying campaign. Just really doing. I've been so nice. Please come and join. Please come and join. Giving us our place all the time, not forcing us to play as Great Britain either. Just letting us play in Great Britain and Ireland. You know, it eventually become the Republic of Ireland, but back then it was just Ireland, Wales, England, and Scotland. Anyway, we didn't. The whole point was Archibald Primrose. He would die. There's I did a whole story about his life and all that, and all the things that he wanted to do in his life, and he'd achieved them all. But he maybe hadn't seen Scotland winning the World Cup. Well, it didn't matter because he died in 1929, the year before the first World Cup was played. But he'd also seen Scotland being the best team in the world because winning 5-1 at Wembley, beating England, the big one in the home internationals, that meant you were the champions of the world. But we didn't win the home internationals that season. Scotland and England finished bottom of the group. That campaign. We're playing to avoid the wooden spoon. Wales won it. Wales won the home internationals. Ireland were second. So that was a bit wrong, a bit wrong. But what happened the following season? Turned out, I looked into it. Archibald Primrose, fifth Earl of Roseby, who'd been Prime Minister in the 1890s, he actually died in, was it May 1929? And the following season's home international, I think Scotland were joint top with England at that one. But the finals, the big game, Scotland-England, was at Hampden, of course, the following year. It's alternate years. One at Hampden, one at Wembley. We won that. We won that 2-0. So he would have got to see that about a month before he died. So maybe I was still right in the general point I was trying to make it. Maybe didn't bother to find it, but at that point, Uruguay had already won the 1928 Olympics and the 1924 Olympics, and that's why you'll hear a lot about this during this World Cup. The 4 stars that they've got above their crest, Uruguay, they've only won 2 World Cups, only won 2 World Cups, but the other 2 are for when they won the Olympics football tournament 1924, 1928, and they were taken. That's why the World Cup gets started, basically, because they were trying to say, does the Olympic football tournament prove you're the best team in the world, though? If the home nations are only taking part, I mean, I think Great Britain did put teams into the Olympic football tournament every now and then, but that was bang, bang. They were saying we won the Olympics 24, 28. That made us the best team in the world. They were the world champions before the World Cup started. In Scotland, we would have something to say about that back in the 1920s. But in 1929, we felt as if we'd won the de facto championship of the world by winning the home internationals. I think we maybe finished joint top of the group with England. We're joint champions. And the Scotland-England game at Hampden was played in front of 110,000. Hampden was still to get expanded a wee bit. It was going to be a bit lower, and we won it in the last minute. We're down to 10 men at one of the Alexes. I think Alex James and Alex Jackson had get injured. No substitutes in those days. We're down to 10 men. It's 0-0 with England, and we got a corner with 2 minutes to go. And they say this was the invention of the Hampden Roar. This was the moment the Hampden Roar properly started, because the crowd just realised Scotland were up against it. The Scottish crowd, as we know, can be a bit fussy as Scots, and maybe that's why we've struggled in World Cups and major tournaments in general since then. But they got right behind the team and just screamed encouragement at them. And then Alex Chain, or is it Cheney? I've never known how to pronounce this guy's name. Cheyne. I think he was still at Aberdeen at the time, born in Glasgow, ends up at Chelsea. He scores direct from the corner. He takes the corner, puts it straight into the net, or bends it directly into the net, and the law had only just changed to allow you to do that. You weren't allowed to put the ball straight in for a corner up until a year or 2 earlier, and he was an expert at it. He started doing it for Chelsea and all that as well. He'd done it a few times in his club career, but Alex Chain just puts the ball straight in for 110,000, and Scotland win 2-0. And then 2 years later, there's a point to this, 2 years later, it's a team of all home-based players at Hampden in the 1931 game against England. And Hampden, I think the North Stand must have been built by that point in time. And we're talking the Hampden Roar when there was only one roof on Hampden back in 1929. It was only the main stand roof. Hampden's at the bottom of one hill, and you've got to walk up a hill to get into the east side of Hampden. You're kind of going below ground level on the west side and on the north side of Hampden, and the south side, the main stand, you're kind of walking in at ground level, and you're basically walking up to your seats, but the bottom row is probably on street level. It's an amazing stadium. So there's a natural kind of amphitheatre of the tenements there that are behind the north stand that were there back in the day when Hampden was first built in 1903. So there's a kind of natural amphitheatre in that part of Mount Florida, but the crowd, the noise wouldn't have had much to bounce off compared to all that's fully roofed now. but it was twice the size. 110,000 was there, and then 2 years later, England back at Hampden, there's 131,000 there. 131,000. Hampden's still to get bigger. It's still going to get bigger as the 30s go on. And it's a team, there's no Anglos, no Chelsea, Newcastle, Arsenal players, Preston North End players in this particular Scotland team. It was all home-based players, but you had John Thompson, the Prince of Celtic goalkeepers, he's in goals for Scotland. Alan Morton, the wee Blue Devil, he's playing in the wing. You've got a front line, the two strikers are Jimmy McGrory and Bob McPhail. Jimmy McGrory of Celtic, who scored 500 goals in 499 games, or whatever it was for Celtic. And Bob McPhail, just like an absolute legend of Rangers goal scoring. Sandy Archibald is playing. David Meiklejohn of Rangers was the captain as well. Apparently it was one of the greatest games he'd ever had. Scotland win 2-0 going on 4 or 5-0, but he's dominated the English, and it was a big thing in those days to win the game without any Anglos, as it still would be now. And Ramsay MacDonald was in the crowd. He was the Labour Prime Minister. I don't know if it was a Labour Party, maybe the coalition government by that point, but he was the first Labour Prime Minister, as you know. Ramsay MacDonald, he'd been Prime Minister in the 20s briefly, and then became Prime Minister again. This is still Prime Minister in the 30s, but the first Labour Prime Minister, Ramsay MacDonald, he's in the crowds. I'm assuming he's going to be in the main stand. Born in Lossiemouth, Ramsay MacDonald, a farm labourer father. He's illegitimate, Ramsay MacDonald. His mother was a housemaid. And there's this book I've been reading for years because it's over 50 years old. John Rafferty, 100. I know it's back to front, folks. Sorry, it's just a thing I've got to do with these podcasts. I'm a technical buffoon. But 100 years of Scottish football, published to mark the centenary of the Scottish Football Association. John Rafferty, and I know about this game because I've read about it so often. Scotland beating England in 1933, and I don't know who this guy W.D. Cocker is. And he was a poet in the style of Robbie Burns from the 1930s, or he's just a journalist who's getting a bit lyrical, but he writes this wee ditty. And when the second goal was scored, gosh, who the hale of Hampden roared. The very Polish loupen cheer, nane look mair proud than the Premier. For Ramsay Louchen Guy Jocosely could maist ha shaking hands wi' Mosley. Shaking hands with Mosley. That's Oswald Mosley, the leader of the British fascists at the time in the 1930s. And you think, oh, that's fine, it just shows you a Labour Prime Minister there. I mean, it was Ramsay MacDonald and Keir Hardie that set up the Labour Party. A few other folk involved in that as well. But then you get Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister. It's working class as well. I think he's mentioned, maybe I didn't quite catch it, but he might have mentioned what his father did for a living. Keir Starmer, big into the Arsenal as well, obviously a massive football fan as well. Keir Starmer, and named after Keir Hardie, the founder with Ramsay MacDonald, one of the co-founders of the Labour Party, in the crowd that day. And you've got Oswald Mosley. This guy's the political opposite, but Ramsay MacDonald was so happy at Scotland scoring this second goal, he could almost have went and shaken hands with Oswald Mosley. And Mosley, of course, a proper posh boy who went along and tried to exploit the working classes and all that, and turned them to fascism, and was totally shamed in that. But he survived the Second World War, Oswald Mosley. Not a problem, and his progeny have kept going, no problem. It was just like Nigel Farage, and Keir Starmer. I think about Scotland winning a game and everybody can get together. It's a big deal there, Alec, because this is the 23rd World Cup we're going into this right now, tonight. We're going into the 23rd FIFA World Cup finals, but it should be the 25th because we missed out the 1942 and the 1946 World Cups because of a wee thing called the Second World War, in which so many of the working class and middle class people of Britain and all over the world lost their life. Millions of them, while Oswald Mosley survived. Just like Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe and probably Tommy Robinson, that will survive as well, because a couple of years after that game at Hampden, 1933, a guy called Marinus van der Lubbe, a Dutchman in Germany, an immigrant, definitely a communist, definitely probably a bit of a pyromaniac, probably an actual arsonist anyway, but definitely with deep emotional problems. Prone to psychotic episodes. He's supposed to have burned down the Reichstag in Berlin, and that gave the Nazi party, who'd just been in power for a month, the excuse to go and remove democracy, such as it was back in 1933 Germany, but they cut it off completely, just stopped it, and that was us until millions died in various horrible ways before the next World Cup, before the 1950 World Cup in Brazil could actually get played. So, we had the 1938 World Cup in France, but that was just squeezed in. By that point in time, it was too late. So fucking don't run about St Enoch Square shouting, "You black bastard," while you kick the fuck out black folk. Brown people in Square while shouting, "Scotland, Scotland." I know it's Union Bells. It's all over Rangers Twitter. Guys actually stoking it up, totally approving of this stuff. Meet at 7 o'clock, where to meet and all that. This is the demonstration. Oh, but it's British, we're getting Britain back and all this kind of stuff. Britain hasn't bloody gone anywhere. Absolute nonsense. You will get defeated. You will be on the wrong side of this. And millions of us might have to die before, but we'll fucking get you at the end of it. Stop this shit. Just stop it. Fucking spent decades thinking, Rangers fans, I get why you can follow it with the SFA. I get why you might not want to support the national team. But every single club, not just in Scotland, has got a problem with the SFA. Every single club in the world has got their support has got a problem with their national association. It thinks their national association is biased against them in some sort of way, and has a problem with other fans of other clubs, supporting their national team. It's the same thing. Grow up. And I've been saying, this is what we do with the Scotland national team. You just go. Most of the games I've been to watch Scotland, I've nearly been to 100 Scotland games. That was my 97th game. That was my 97th Scotland game, the Curaçao friendly the other day. Most of them have been in Scotland. Most of them have been at Hampden. And I'd say half of them, there is at least one end has been shut. One end of Hampden, which it's the best part of 20,000, has been shut. So if the Rangers support wanted to go and take the Scotland team back for themselves, you just turn up en masse one night and watch. Just no one to watch Scotland because they're embarrassed. Scotland are shite. But suddenly I'm feeling it now. Oh, everybody's going, Lauren Shankland signing for them as well. It's a nice thing. We've got so many Rangers players in the team and Rangers players doing well. But it's just the fact that Scotland are getting back to major finals is people are suddenly saying, maybe come back to watching Scotland. That's nice. But it's watching that footage of the shit that was happening the other night. It reminds me of, was it last year? I'm driving along Maryhill Road. A bit of Maryhill Road that's usually all tricolours, little party-sized tricolours go up in the lamppost whenever Celtic win the league. Irish tricolours, sorry, the flags of Ireland. But this time it was Saltires. I'm thinking, Scotland only playing the night. What's that? That's good. They're getting better. It doesn't look very SNP, so it's who also try to hijack the Saltire another way. But that's nice. And then I saw the Saltires hanging outside the flats at the Cube. Is it the Cube they call it? Just across the road for Maryhill Police Station on Maryhill, but further along Maryhill Road, I'm thinking, what is going on? And it's suddenly clocked. This is the Raise the Colours stuff, the Scottish version, Raise the Colours. So I've spent all these years thinking, I can see Rangers fans getting properly behind the national team again, and the first thing I hear is a fucking guy shouting, Scotland, Scotland, alongside "Ya Black Bastard," while kicking fuck out folk in the Toon Centre the other night. It's fucking embarrassing, and just not the way we want things to go. Sorry, I just had to say that. You want to get into it. I mean, fucking the medium is the message. It's folk can't cope with video footage. The amount of white folk that are stabbing white folk in Belfast, trying to behead the guy. You kneecap him, you nail him to a fence first, and then you kneecap him. You can do it with hammers. We usually do it with a gun, whatever, or you can set folk in fire and stuff like that. We're dealing with grasses and boy racers and that in our various communities for the year. What are you doing? Fucking try to hit a guy with a knife and all that? That's bad. We'll do the violence round about here. If folk can't cope with seeing the video, you read about the stuff, doesn't seem to have the same impact. Or the critic like Wayne Cousins, what he did to. I don't want to get into it, but you know what I'm saying. It's bollocks. It's absolute bollocks. These folk are all telling you, grow up, get real, look at what's happening on the street. I fucking know more about what's happening on the street. I get jumped. I'd tell you before. Back, was it 2000? My mate and I had been up to my mate had never been to Central Park, Cowdenbeath, so we went along one Saturday to see Queen's Park, of all teams, winning the league, winning the 3rd Division title at Central Park, Cowdenbeath. Just a few drinks in Cowdenbeath, and then a lot more drinks in Edinburgh, and the way back through in the train, and a few more drinks in Glasgow, and I'm walking up the road back to my house, and a guy said, "What, you got a drink time on you, mate?" I need to. I actually looked at my wrist, and the guy decks me. Well, he didn't actually deck me. That was the problem. That's what saved me. I kind of weebles wobble, but I can get decked, no bother. I couldn't fight my way out of a bit of paper bag. But I went back the way and I bounced off a wee wall, a wee kind of abutment and a wall thing, like a big thick gate post. So I kind of come back forward. I'm swinging. Never hit MD, but I never get hit again. There was 3 guys. They were all, I would say, of Pakistani heritage. Thick Glasgow accents, obviously. And turned out, I reported to the police, mostly because they knocked the specs off my face and I couldn't find my specs. I couldn't find my specs and I wanted an insurance claim to get my specs back. But also, they jumping other folk who are not going to be as lucky as me. One of them actually had a bike chain. It was such a corny thing. It was like the Warriors or something. One of them had the chain off a bike. Another one had a cricket bat. Another fella just didn't need that. He was just at the big fella and he'd punched me and I'm swinging at him and I had to eventually sit down the wee wall and just go, I was getting knackered. You know, they'd gone to one and the other two would come in and I was going to the other. There was no more. I think they just got bored and I said, guys, you're going to have to cut. They just jumped back in the motor and away they went. But the police were telling me basically they'd been knocking the shit out white people all round the West End. I did not think the response to this, because I did knives pulled on me by white guys for the same town as me when I was a kid. I had a beer glass put in my face by a very white, very Christian people and a boozer in Glasgow city centre and stuff like that. Any time there's been violence at the fit, but except that time I got caught up with the subway. Is it Subway Army? The Wolves casuals call themselves. I went to Birmingham City against Wolves because it's two European club finalists I hadn't seen in the flesh. I went to see them playing each other, get two off a list at the same time. A derby, it was a 12 noon kick-off. The thing with West Brom were at home at the Hawthorns against Preston North End at 3 o'clock. So I was trying desperately to get to that game, to get back to my motor to head to the Hawthorns after the game, so I wasn't watching what I was doing. Normally I'm kind of aware of this kind of stuff, and I just was right behind the Subway Army, the Wolves casuals, as the Zulu, the famous Birmingham City multicultural casuals, started lobbing cider bottles at us for this boozer down by the railway side, near a railway tunnel. So it was... I did get caught up in that, but most of the violence and the stuff I've seen at the fit, but it's all been white on white. It's been pretty white on white. It's this idea. It's like the one thing that unites white folk in Britain with people of every other ethnicity is fucking rapey, pervy men and murderous people or people with fucking mental problems attacking folk in the street and all that. But we've heard nothing about all this kind of stuff. Or they've heard too much the George Floyd thing. People are just like, they heard the George Floyd thing and it pissed them off. White folk, I hate, why are we bothering with them? Why are we bothering with somebody of a different colour? And the Stephen Lawrence thing. I mean, fucking unbelievable injustice to that fella, that young man. And new folk are saying with the Henry Novak thing, oh, well, that's your Stephen Lawrence thing. We want the same outcry. We want the same, because I was basically telling you that they were sick of hearing about any injustice perpetrated on, black people, women, even people of any kind of ethnicity, other ethnicity than white, who'd been murdered, who'd been assaulted, it's got to be black folk. It's got to be, everybody does it. All cultures have got head cases. Jimmy Savile, fucking Fred and Rosemary West, the Moors murderers, Peter Sutcliffe, we're going about saying it's just black folk. It's just that fucking absolute garbage. But it's just a huge distraction. I think we protested about, sorry, I'm just going to say this, I might as well get it out of the way because it's so noxious, is the availability of housing. They've been in Glasgow, we're going through Glasgow Fair for our lives, and the Razor gangs for Glasgow. I mean, Paisley was stab capital of Western Europe for I don't know how many different years, and it wasn't brown people that were doing that. It was, anyway, it's availability of affordable housing, the energy bills, prices, global fucking warming, just the money that has been stolen from people while they distract you with this base level nonsense. The medium is the message. Just don't follow that, folks. Don't follow Musk. Don't follow Tommy Robinson. Don't follow Farage. You know this, folks. Sorry, you know this. I'm preaching to the converted here. But it's a podcast full of mistakes. It's a podcast that's going to be all about lists. I'm going to start off by just throwing a whole lot of proper nouns and digits at you. See if you can guess what I'm trying. Just if you can guess the theme. See if you can guess the overall pattern. And once you do, see if you can guess the next one that I'm going to say. And just get it to a point where you just cast it onto your Wi-Fi, hi-fi, or whatever, and have the whole family gathered round the laptop, and they can sing along with me. 1954, Zurich, the hard term, Austria, win 1-0. Austria beating us 1-0. Erich Probst, Zurich ended in the CH. Erich Probst of Austria. He was second top scorer in that World Cup, but Sander Kosi's got more than twice as many goals as him. Sander Kosi's of Hungary. But Erich Probst, he scores the goal, and it ends in a CH. Same as Zurich ends in the CH. The hard term, the hard tower. Grasshopper Zurich's ground no longer there, destroyed. This is all very, very symbolic for a first place, for a place for it all to start. The hard term, the actual hard tower, the defensive, medieval defensive tower that the hard term pitch, the hard term stadium was named after, it takes its name from nearby. It still exists, but the stadium where Rangers lost 3-0 to Grasshopper Zurich in the Champions League is no longer there. But that's where it starts. With us losing 1 Eric CH, as in Eric Shadler, who played for Hibs and played in the first match I ever attended, first Rangers match I was ever at, the first senior football match I was ever at back in 1977, the year before, prepping me for the 78 World Cup. His mum and his dad was a German prisoner of war. And he went to the 74 World Cup in West Germany as part of the Scotland squad, never played. He only played for Scotland once in a friendly in West Germany against West Germany, a country split up because of the Second World. This is immigration and why you shouldn't get into fascism explained in a wanner and summed up in the tragic person of Erich Shadler. But it starts off, Zurich, we're losing 1-0 to Austria, and then go to St Jakobs Park in Basel, we lose 7-0 to Uruguay, the holders. Then it's Abadi does many bad things, as Tommy Docherty said. Then we're going to Vasteris, I'm not sure the pronunciation, in Sweden, and we're drawing 1-1 with Paraguay. The first time we don't get beat. We draw 1-1 with Paraguay, and Jimmy Murray of Hearts scores. We're first ever, and then it's off to Norrköping, the Idrotts Park in Norrköping, where we also played twice in Euro 92. And we lose 3-2 to Paraguay. I think Bobby Collins of Celtic might have scored one of ours. And then it's off to Orebro, and we lose 2-1 to France. I think we're wearing white shirts. I think we miss a penalty. We lose 2-1 to France, the great France team of 58 that ends up in third place. And it is the two stars of that team, or the two biggest stars, Raymond Kopa and Just Fontaine, that score France's 2 goals. But Sammy Baird scores our goal in that game, and that's the first Rangers player ever to score in that. And he's Just Fontaine, and Raymond Just Fontaine, of course, finishes the tournament with 13 goals, the most ever scored by a player in that thing. And then it's Cordoba, Germany. It's the Westfalen in Dortmund. Zaire, first game in 58. We get our the first time we don't lose. First game 74. First time we win, beat Zaire 2-0. Dennis Law gets to come on and have a taste of it. It's Peter Lorimer, Joe Jordan. It's then the Waldstadion in Frankfurt 0-0 with Brazil. The holders again. The holders this a bit different from the last time we played. The holders 0-0 with Brazil, and then it's the Waldstadion in Frankfurt again. It's 1-1. We are all pals from Yugoslavia. Joe Jordan equalising later on, but it's too little too late. But Joe Jordan scores the first in 78 in Cordoba. He scores in Cordoba against Peru. And we get beat 3-1 by Peru, miss a penalty. Don Massenek misses a penalty in that one. In Cordoba, it's 1-1 with Iran. Eskandarian scoring their goal in that game. Eskandarian, I think he played for Partick Thistle or something like that. And then it's off to Mendoza, where we beat the Dutch 3-2. Archie Gemmell, goal of the tournament. And it's too little too late. And then we're in Malaga, the Rosaleda in Malaga. And it's 5-2. We're 3-0 up after just over half an hour against New Zealand, but they pull 2 back in the second half, and then we score another couple. And we're the only team to pit 5 past New Zealand. Brazil only pit 4 past them. USSR only pit 3 past them, but we conceded 2 goals, and that's where the problems start. Always for the very first game. Usually is the one we didn't put enough past that year. So after that, we go to Benito Villamarin in Seville. Much changed now when Rangers under Philip Clement became the first Scottish team to win in Seville. or to avoid any kind of defeat. But they also won there in Seville in the Europa League in 2022-2023. But you had 2023-2024, sorry. But we went in, we scored first. Dave Neri, he scores first, and then it's Zico and Eder and Oscar and Oscar, Falcao. We get beat 4-1 in that one in Brazil when Jockstein saying we tried to play them at fit, but we tried to play them at fit. But then it's back to the Rosaleda in Malaga, 2 each with the Soviet Union. There's Shingeli and Shiradze, the two guys from the great Dinamo Tbilisi team that had won the Cup Winners' Cup the season before, the year before, 1981. They go 2-1 up through him. Souness equalises. Joe Jordan scores the first goal that night, and Souness scores the last one to equalise, but it's not enough. And then it's Netza. Is it Netza Qualiotol or something? That's thankfully everybody calls it Netza, just calls it Netza for short. In Mexico, losing 1-0. Preban Elkia scoring the only goal game for Denmark. Then it's to Querétaro against the West Germans. We lose 2-1. Gordon Strachan scores our goal and does the wee celebration, probably the most appropriately Scottish celebration. Fantastic goal. He's celebrating, but he can't get up big enough because he's not big enough. He can't get over the advertising holding. He's going to take the piss out of himself for doing that. But we lose the game 2-1, and then it's Uruguay back in Netza. They go down to 10 men after about 0.2 seconds and still manage to get the draw that puts them through in third place instead of us, despite the fact the Uruguayans had lost 6-1 to Denmark, 0-0, the scum of world football and all that kind of stuff. And then it's the Luigi Ferrari Stadium in Genoa. Sampdoria and Genoa share that beautiful stadium there. We lose 1-0 to Costa Rica and Cayasso. Horrific. Then it's back to the same place, that same stadium, the Luigi Ferrari again. We beat Sweden 2-1. Fantastic performance. Stuart McCall not yet at Rangers. He gets the first, and then Maurice Johnston. The pressure on Maurice Johnston to take this penalty. Nothing compared to the pressure he'd been under a year before, the summer before that. So this was an absolute doddle. Glenn Stromberg pulls one back, but it's a great result. But go to the Stadio delle Alpi in Turin and lose 1-0 to Muller. With a bit of help for Jim Leighton. Muller, named after Gerd Muller, my all-time World Cup hero. A Brazilian named after a German, which just shows how bad things got for the Brazilians between 1970 and 1994. But in he goes at the back post there to put it over the line, and we lose 1-0 to Brazil again. And that's 1990. The next one is the Stade de France, isn't it? In Saint-Denis in Paris. Again, we're playing Brazil. Again, they're the holders. Have I missed something? 1990, didn't qualify for 94. 1998, we played twice in a row. I'd actually thought about it that way before. It was 2 games in the bounce against Brazil in terms of World Cup. So there we go. We lose 2-1, but this time we at least scored the penalty. John Collins, they played in the opening game. Never going to play in the final, probably Scotland, but at least we've played in the opening game at World Cup. Again, against the holders, only lost 2-1, didn't disgrace ourselves. Then we go to Parc Lescure, beautiful place, beautiful Art Deco 1920s stadium that's still used for the rugby, but Girardin de Bordeaux left it to a big new fancy stadium and then basically went and bust. Imagine having to go back through and play in the lower leagues and all that after being a European finalist as Girardin de Bordeaux, the former club of Zinedine Zidane, had to do. But Parc Lescure, I've never been in it. It looks great on the television anyway. Beautiful Art Deco 1920s stadium. And we dominate with Norway. Craig Burley, last guy to score in this tournament, in these finals for us. And one of the flows, not Tor Andrew, but another flow. I think he scores Norway's goal. And then we're off to Saint Etienne. The Stade Geoffrey Guichard, Saint Etienne. I was at a friendly between Scotland and France at Hampden. Is it 2002? 2000, maybe 2000. Anyway, at this point in time, France were the holders of both the World Cup and the Henri Delaunay, the Euros. And they beat us 2-0 at Hampden, and I'm in the North Stand, and there was a couple of young folk and a student-looking types a few rows behind us, and right at the end, as they were all leaving, they had the big bedsheet flag, and they'd written on green spray paint on the bedsheet flag, and it was, 26 years ago. I could translate it, it was EC, 26 hands, EC. It was our greatest ever moment, came here 26 years ago at Hampden, and there were Saint Etienne fans, Allez Vert, Saint Etienne fans who, their only European final, their greatest moment was losing 1-0 in the 1976 European Cup final at Hampden, put Rangers out en route to that final, just like Eintracht Frankfurt put us out en route to the 1960 final at Hampden. And they lost 1-0. Of course, it was a square post. Fuck the square post. Those fucking square posts, whatever the French is for that. That's just a really iconic phrase amongst Saint Etienne supporters of a generation, the generation just before me. I don't mean I'm a Saint Etienne fan, but that age group, because they watched that European final, that European Cup final. If they weren't there, Franz Roth, who scored the only goal of the game against us in the 1967 Cup Winners' Cup final for Bayern Munich, he scores the only goal of that game as well. He got one cap for Germany. He won like 3 straight European Cups. Scored in the 75 final as well, and scored the only goal in the Cup Winners' Cup final. What a team the Germans had back then. But he scores the only goal of the game from a free kick, but Saint Etienne were hitting the post left, right and centre. But it was a old-fashioned square post that used to have at Hampden and Ibrox at that point in time, so the ball kept bouncing back out in a way that it wouldn't have the Saint Etienne fans maintain if it had been round, circular, tubular goals. So this was the Saint Etienne fans were there. And here we are back in Saint Etienne, returning the favour. A couple of years before that, Morocco beat us 3-0. I think it was Craig Burley sent off. I saw something saying Craig Burley get sent off. I had no recollection of that whatsoever. A recollection of Jim Leighton just pitting the ball in the back of the net and stuff like that, but I had no recollection of that. We get beat 3-0, and that's us until Haiti in Boston, in Foxborough, at the Pats Stadium in the early hours of Sunday morning British time. It's 23 games. Scotland have played 23 games in the World Cup finals. This is our 9th World Cup finals. We've played 23 in the past. We can't even average 3 games per World Cup finals because we just in 1954 they only had 2 group games. I mean, you lose them by an average of 8-0. You probably do deserve to go home before you get a third game. And now I want us to get, before we get, when we start our 24th game, I'm all about the 4th game, getting game 4. But you see how stats and all that, you can use them, you can form them into patterns. And you can kind of try to decipher, is this a losing? Is this a pattern of failure? It absolutely is. But, are we, it's like what's happening just now, this echoing what happened in Germany in the 1930s, what's happening in kind of basically Western politics just now because of the tech bros, because of massive corporations just want to shut down all progress, to bypass democracy. You've got to see the pattern there, repeating what was happening in the 1930s and make sure we do the right thing. We've got to break that pattern just now. I want Scotland to get to game 4 in a World Cup. Just get to a 4th game. Get a 4th game in the World Cup finals. Maybe we start doing that in game 24 in our history in the World Cup finals. I'm talking about Idris Park. Is it Idris Park? Excuse my pronunciation. In North Shopping, where we played that game in the 1958 World Cup in Sweden against Paraguay, but we also played 2 games there in Euro 92 against the Germans, against the CIS, in the very same stadium. That's the only stadium in which Scotland have played both Euros and World Cup finals games. Now we played at Wembley in 2 different Euros. You know, we've played 2 games in tournaments because you played like. We're in Malaga for 2 games in 1982. We're in Netza for 2 games in 1986. Within tournaments, but in different tournaments. We played at Wembley in Euro 96. We played at Wembley in Euro 2020/2021. But that was both the Euros. So it's quite you get wee coincidences, you get wee stats. But I don't want to get too ahead of yourself with these because I ended up embarrassing myself, didn't I? I make lots of mistakes. I've got into my snagging items here, but I said in the last podcast that Red Star Belgrade, Crvena Zvezda Belgrade were the only club ever to. What I said was, I didn't think about Crvena Zvezda Belgrade. That was a problem, and even I must be at the point where it's just traumatic, and I can't talk about it without making more mistakes. I said that no team wearing red and white stripes had ever won the European Cup or the Champions League, and I'd started off on the right lines. Saying like Arsenal had they only played 2 Champions League finals. They'd lost 2 of them, and the last one just a few weeks ago they lost in their traditional home kit. At least they wore their home kit. I thought that great Arsenal home kit has graced the final of the Champions League with the red top and the white sleeves, and that's the same as Stade de Reims wore, a red top with white sleeves. All red with white sleeves in the 1956 and 1959 finals, which they lost Eintracht Frankfurt. In the 1960 European Cup final, which they lost 7-3 at Hampden, they wore a red top with white sleeves, and I started thinking, I mean, Ajax have won the European Cup with just one massive red block on their home kit, and plenty of teams in all red, even all red away kits like Ajax in '73 and Hamburg in their highest val in '83 have won it in all red, as well as Liverpool and Bayern, obviously, and Nottingham Forest. But I just was. I kind of got ahead of myself. I thought, I don't think. And Atletico Madrid are the only club to have lost 3 finals of the European Cup or Champions League without ever having won the thing. And they obviously play in red and white stripes. And I overreached. I got ahead of myself. I just went for it. Assertion without evidence. I'm political again. I went ahead. I just got ahead of myself because I liked how it sounded. That's fine. No club with red and white stripes, wearing red and white stripes, has ever won the European Cup or the Champions League. And Robert gets in touch. Robert, legend of the podcast, he gets in touch. And Red Star Belgrade. And I'm like, fuck. Crvena Zvezda Belgrade. It's not like I don't go on about it every 2 minutes that I was there for the second leg in 1990, 91. I think it was November 1990, the second leg. It was only the second round when Red Star Belgrade pumped us 3-0 in Belgrade, and then return game at Ibrox was kind of rudimentary. It was only half full. Ibrox that night, my mate and I standing in the enclosure. It was still terracing then, getting to see, if nothing else, it was only a 1-1 draw in the night. We equalised right at the end. Alan McCoy, a goal that was an absolute embarrassment for the Red Star goalkeeper in defence, Crvena Zvezda Belgrade. But fucking Darko Pančić, I mean, what a goal. I remember watching it at the time live thinking, that's breathtaking. But you watch it back, it's even more breathtaking. So I don't know who is doing the business, doing the right-hand side for Red Star and towards the Broom one, and he floats this ball over to the back post. It's Robert Prozinecki, who glides backwards. Just glides backwards. Like Nosferatu or something, like Gary Oldman as Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, just gliding along. How is he moving? And he glides backwards to take the ball in his chest, and Stuart Monroe's convinced it's his hand as well, and maybe it was, but it was so close to his chest anyway. And then he glides forward, and he goes through, like a ghost. He goes through Stuart Monroe. I don't mean, in the kind of phraseology, the colloquialism, he went right through him. Like he went in there with a 250 tackle on Stuart Monroe. He just walks through him. He passes through the ball. You watch this. I'll try and put the link up if I remember at the bottom of this. And he gets to the byline with this ball, and he does pull it back, strictly speaking. He does cross it, strictly speaking. It is both of those things, but mostly it's a kind of this combination, this super delicate, achingly painful, super accurate, dink type layoff type kind of volley to the side with the outside of his right toes to Darko Pančic's chest on the penalty spot, and Darko Pančić takes it in his chest and then spins and half volleys, half overhead kicks this thing balletically past Chris Woods, and it's 1-0, 4-0 in aggregate. We do equalise on the night, 4-1, we go out, but what a goal it is, and I talk about it all the time because it's so amazing. I mean, Stuart Monroe's appealing for handball, but I think he's actually saying, this guy's a ghost, Prozinecki's a ghost. Darko Pančić scores the winning goal in that season's final in the penalty shootout. I fell out with my girlfriend after watching it. Didn't get a lot of live games in the telly back in the days. Yes, I'm an old man. So it was, but the way Red Star Belgrade were playing football in that tournament, they beat Bayern in the semis by winning in Munich to start with. Went to extra time in Belgrade in front of 95,000 or something in the second leg. They pumped Dinamo Dresden and that. And they're playing fantastic. And it's also Bernard Tapie's cheating, but and no doubt fantastic Marseille team who'll win the first Champions League, and a couple of years later they're meeting up in the final, Chrissy Waddle and all that. This is going to be amazing, and I sit and watching it, I think this is going to be the greatest game of it. Finally, I'd grown up with finals just being 1-1, while reading about all the great finals of the 60s, the 50s and 60s, the goal fests with Real Madrid and Eintracht, Real Madrid and Benfica and all that. And that's finally I'm going to get to see one of these great games. And it was worse than ever, 0-0. And Red Star Belgrade win the thing on penalties. Darko Pančić, who I saw scoring live in the flat. It's absolutely shame. I think I just liked the idea that I was overreaching. And it makes me insecure. What I'm doing here, I'm summing up how Scotland with the World Cup. Just 78. Anyway, I was. Made me really insecure, and I reacted to Robert's post a bit like I think I've been watching one of the reality TV things about police, and it was a guy, the police just chasing various things in Scotland, and it was a guy from Orkney who was in a stolen rusty white van in Wick, and the police found him with like a Stanley knife in his glove compartment, and a Rottweiler in the back of the van, and a white packet of powder, tiny little see-through packet of powder in his pockets, which he said he found on the beach and just was interested in what it was, hadn't actually looked at it yet to know what it was. So they tested him for cocaine, and the tester thing was off the charts. He was just completely testing positive for cocaine, and the guy starts getting, he says, well, I could get the cocaine, I mean, folk could have that in a note, like a banknote. Folk could have been snorting cocaine through banknotes, and I could have handled the same banknotes at the supermarket or something like that, and the policeman's going, didn't know, did you? And the guy's, oh, you could have handled, how do I know it's not you that's tested, you gave me the test, it could be you. You know, have you tested? But you take the test and see if it's not you that's contaminated. Like, the guy was raging because he was rang. He was raging one of the ways it could have been. And I was raging at myself, and I realised I was just gutted that I'd got this thing rang, and it's really affected my confidence. You know, I don't know why this week. I think I've been at Scotland back in the World Cup levels of doubt. Levels of getting ahead of myself. Scotland back in the World Cup levels of being desperate to realise a bold claim. Scotland back in the World Cup finals levels of failing to see the real pattern. Scotland back in the World Cup finals levels of hubris. I've become the very thing that Scotland are in the history of the World Cup finals. I overreached. I thought I didn't forensically check out. I didn't sit there and go through all the European finals. Is that that's all I do. I go for my walks and that, and just go through all the European finalists. I recite them to myself as a way of passing time, because I've put the headphones on. I get the waxy build up, you know, to listen to music and stuff like that. So that's what I do. And I go for my wee walks to try and keep myself out of the rascal scooter, to keep the weight, just have me obese rather than morbidly obese. That's my ambition. But all I do is go through the European finals, and now what do I do now? Do I reduce the ambition of my claims, my trivia claims on these podcasts? I'm going to do, maybe the only one I could come up with that I felt safe about recently is it's only teams in blue stripes that have won a European final played at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. I mean, that's pathetic. No, there's only been 2 Europa League finals played at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin, as far as I know. You know, as far as I can remember. Maybe there's been other ones played there that I forgot about, and maybe I know I watched the game, Porto beating Braga in 2011, and Atalanta humping Bayer Leverkusen in 2024 in the finals in Dublin. But did Atalanta wear their home shirt? I'm pretty sure they did. But was it even the stripes, the blue and black stripes? Because maybe they did that Inter thing where they started messing about with the stripes, and the kind of zigzag pattern going through it. Porto, I'm pretty sure, would wear their home shirt against Braga in the 2011 final, but maybe Porto wear an all blue top, and I'm not quite remembering it right. It shattered my confidence, this thing. What have I got? All I could think of was Olympique Marseille. Olympique Marseille, they've played 5 European finals, same as Rangers. They've only won one of the European finals, same as Rangers, and they won. They weren't allowed to defend. The same as Rangers. You know, they didn't get the European Cup, the Champions League taken off them in 1993 because of the cheating. We didn't get the Cup Cup taken off us. We didn't get stripped of the title in 1972 because we went on the pitch and fought Franco's henchmen. Just trying to have a joyous celebration, and an actual Franco's still alive at that point. He's still in power. The Guardia Civil was the stormtroopers of Franco's fascist regime in Spain. And they come on and gave us a doing because we're turning Barcelona, you know, a place of, you know, as they weren't the best pleased with Central, with Madrid's, the power base, the fascism that was suppressed by Franco's regime. It's the only place you could talk Catalan and all this kind of stuff. And we're on the pitch there, keeping the guys are doing because they attacked us. We're just a drunken celebration, a bit of joy. And we get, but anyway, we didn't get stripped of the title in 72, but we weren't allowed to defend it. We get banned for 2 years, commuted to a year. But we weren't allowed to defend it. And in Marseille, it's the same with the one European final that they won. And it was 3 Winners' Cup finals that we were in. And the UEFA Cup, Europa League, Marseille have been 3. They won the big one, of course. But is that coincidence safe? Have I got that right as well? I just don't know. I don't know what's happening anymore. I think it's just shattered my confidence, and that's how I felt in 1978 in Argentina, because I was just a young boy at the time. I was just a kid at the time, and I don't know, maybe it's something to prove. It's a wee man syndrome thing, even though I'm like 23 stone and 6 foot. 24 stone, sorry, and 6 foot. Getting bigger all the time, really, but I still, you know, you just got a wee mindset, you got a wee personality, you got something. Is that what the problem with Scotland? Nemo, Mela, Chesset, nobody messes with me with impunity kind of thing. You're just always ready for a fight because you feel deeply insecure. Is that why I'm making these bold claims that I can't actually back up, and it shattered me? So how you doing, folks? This is what we're an hour in now, and this is the introduction. This is your fat egg. Yes, I've seen the Iron Brew advert. Oh, what are we like? Just reached the second round. Yes, I saw us tanking Bolivia. Perhaps it's all coming together at just the right time. Just reached the second round. Yes, I saw the Infantino banner. Oh, the banter. This Granny, you're a fanny. Gianni, you're a fanny. Would have been better. Just reached the second round. Aye, it's Brazil Morocco should absolutely scud us, and we'll be lucky to draw with Haiti. Just get out of the group stage. Yes, the temperatures are ridiculous, and ice are waiting to arrest everybody outside the stadium. Just get out of the group stage. Yes, it's our first World Cup in almost 3 decades. In the last six, haven't had any partying at all because no Scotland, no party. Imagine having 6 World Cup finals and there's no partying going on at all at those tournaments because we are absolutely mental. What we like wearing skirts and stuff like that. No nation on earth had an idea about national dress. National dress was invented by us as a context, as a concept, just for the first time ever in our long, miserable, underachieving existence. Culloden, Flodden, Solway Moss, fucking Darien. 4 fucking games. Just play 4 games at a major finals tournament, Scotland. Just get out the group stage. 2026 World Cup preview pod, sponsored by Gersnet. Every Friday. 9 p.m. every Sunday, 9:30 p.m. live on the Gersnet YouTube channel. That's during the season, during the club season, and it's very much not on just now. Although Brian and myself did some pods during the last World Cup on Gersnet, and we enjoyed them. Me and Brian enjoyed them, but there wasn't a lot of I think 2 views per pod or something like that, which is more than this one's going to get. But Gersnet, the Rangers podcast, the best Rangers podcast there is, by fans, for Rangers fans. I'm sponsored by that. I'm also sponsored by these adverts all over the telly just now from advertisers who, kind of God bless them, obviously don't have an official World Cup licensing agreement. So they do a scenario where I saw one, there's one for tellies, I think, like that, and it's almost exactly this scenario, but it's like you'll get a bloke who's got a white t-shirt on. It's a white t-shirt, and it's got a red cross on his tit. Got a red cross on it, kind of oblong red cross. Maybe it is a St George's cross. No 3 lions on it, and it's got a red cross because FIFA don't own red crosses. FIFA don't own flags. They don't own national flags, so it's quite perfectly allowed to wear that. And he'll have a pal who's probably a woman, and she will be black or mixed ethnicity. That's I'll give you that. That's no problem. But she'll have a dark blue t-shirt on, and it's no got the 11 thistles run about lying rampant, and but it will have a wee white cross, kind of diagonally, kind of St Andrews type white cross, maybe even a saltire on that shirt as well. And she's just, that's fair because they don't own the Scottish flag. They don't own countries, do they? FIFA, no, they can't stop them wearing that. And they'll have a pal who turns up, and he just happens to be wearing a canary yellow t-shirt. They don't own colours. FIFA don't own colours. He's wearing a canary yellow t-shirt, and he'll have big long white socks on, right up to his knees. And in my mind, it's cut off denims, but he's wearing shorts. He's wearing light blue coloured shorts as well. And he comes into the house. Oh, here he is! And he comes into the house in this advert, and he's dancing. And that dance just happens to be a samba. It just happens to be a samba. Gianni Infantino doesn't control dances. He doesn't get to license that. He doesn't own the foxtrot. Infantino doesn't own the tango or the bossa nova and like that. So the guy just likes to samba, and that's and he comes. It's the weirdest Tampax advert I've seen yet. But hey, whether you're on the sofa in front of the telly at 2 a.m. trying to sober up your gammon husband in time for kick-off, or dehydrating in the stadium while immigration and customs enforcement wait to jail you in Salvador, get into the Football Cup Global Trophy Tournament flow that suits you this summer, as they say in the USA and Canada, but not Mexico. It's a go, period. How you doing, folks? My name's Alec Anderson. Yabba dabba doo. We support the boys in blue, and it's easy. We're on the march with Ali's army. We're going to the Argentine, and we'll really shake them up when we win the World Cup, 'cause Scotland are the greatest football team, and he's handing the ball to me. I have a dream. I have a dream. If dreams come true, if dreams come true, then bonnie Scotland, I'll play for you. Don't come home too soon. It's only at the end of it's only at the end there I really kind of ruined the tune because the Delimitri don't come home too soon. It's it's not after my time, but it's just at that point where I cut off, where I stop, but it's too much an effort to take in music. It's natural for me, all my musical influences, all this stuff that I remember. It's up to the 1990s. It's just towards the end of the 1990s that I stop kind of taking part, basically in music and stuff. Just like Scotland and World Cup finals, 1998, since we last qualified for the thing. That's 28 years since Scotland last played at World Cup finals, and the 29 years after, straight after Germany lost the Second World War, they fucking won 2 World Cups. Anyway, it's World Cup fever, World Cup fever. Cape Verde, Curacao, Jordan, Uzbekistan, they've qualified for the first ever World Cup finals. You've got Czechia and the Democratic Republic of Congo changing their names, trying to disguise themselves, kind of changing their names. I think Czechia's qualified for the World Cup under Czechia before, have they? But there's various stuff going on. We see you, Zaire. We see you. But apart from that, it's absolutely mental. We've gone from 64 games in the last World Cup up to 104 games in this World Cup. It's ridiculous. 8 groups of 4 last World Cup. We're up to 12 groups of 4 in this World Cup. We've gone from 32 teams, which is already far too big, up to 48 teams for the World Cup. It's an extra week. It's going to be 39 days, I think, as opposed to 32 days that this World Cup's going to be. As I said to my wife the other day, it says she was at Asda, and she got the tortillas. She got the enchiladas, and I said to her, "But no, let's not do that again." It's just, but it's going to be 48 teams, 12 groups of 4. It's 39 days long, and it's just far too. And stadiums, I mean, we're up to 6. There's only 8 stadiums in Qatar. There's going to be 16 stadiums. But 2 co-hosts has been the record previously. Now we've got 3 co-hosts. 3 nations is the record. The new record was set in terms of the countries that are actually hosting this thing. In 16 stadiums, that is the bit. No, it's not actually. 2002 World Cup, there was 20 stadiums. That kind of ruins it a bit. That ruins that. That ruins it a bit. It's like the Kevin Bridges thing about when folks say, "Guess how much a drink was?" Guess how much a drink was, and you just say £60 a pint. And they're like, "Oh no, actually, it wasn't that much." A bit like that when it comes to the number of stadiums we're having this. Well, we get 3 in Mexico. We've got 2 in Canada, and there's 11 in the USA. But that's 16 altogether. But there was 20 stadiums hosted the 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea. But normally it's 12. Normally it's around about the 12 mark, so it's quite dramatic. You've got the U's, Uzbekistan, Uruguay, USA. They're all playing in this World Cup. But there's actually 15 teams I found with a U in their name. Because you've got Austria, Australia. You get South Korea, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia. You've got all the Souths in there as well. Portugal, Belgium, Curacao, Ecuador, Paraguay, Turkey, Tunisia. It would have been. The World Cup itself, when I first started watching it, was 16 teams total, and it would have been 16 teams with a U in their name if it wasn't for the fact that Romania get kicked out for a historic spelling violation. I know it's back to front, but you can work out what that says. Just have a look. It's the best kind of jokes I can manage. But yeah, here we go. It's World Cup 2026. It's up and running, certainly by the time you've started watching this podcast. A better cover. I'm going to do a whole lot of stuff at the World Cup still, but a better cover domestic stuff. I'll start off, with some snagging items, my snagging list from the last pod I did. First of all, this is going to be the first snagging item. For the next pod that I do, the duration of that pod, it was 2 hours, 30 minutes long, and that was following on a 2.5 hour podcast at the previous one. But there'd been 2 weeks in between times. and it's just a whole lot of stuff actually happening there. I should do a pod every day probably, but it's summer. I'm trying to get a wee break and refresh myself for the. But I can't help it. The football keeps happening. I'm kind of addicted to it. It's just I watched the Rangers Review. And these guys, Rangers Review are the best Rangers journalists there are in this country. It's the best stuff, and even they're struggling with their daily kind of pods. It's getting to the point where it's a bit. It's this pod is coming like a ghost pod. All the clubs have been closed down. I mean, find them more because Danny Röhl's supposed to be going to RB Leipzig. They'll plenty to go on about, but they're struggling. I mean, like Derek and Josh went on. Chris, I think Josh was away in his holidays in Spain, but they've been. It's getting to the point. What kind of pie would you go for, the Scottish pie or the steak pie, Chris? I'll tell you what, I wouldn't say no to wee haggis and steak pie. I think you should get that on the menu there in the concourses at Ibrox. No, I'll go to agree with you there. And what about the pitch? You want the pitch? You want it like the tartan, the kind of tartan pattern, or just the vertical lines for wing to wing? As far as I'm concerned, Derek, because we don't have the VAR in the stadium, so it's a way of if you're just watching the game. You've not got a laptop or that, you can't see the screens. They're drawing the lines for the offsides. You can use the lines of the pitch. That's all we need. It's a bit idolatrous to have the tartan, so just the staunch, just go with it. They're struggling, so I am definitely going to struggle to do a daily pod. But yet stuff just keeps happening. So much great content to cover. I've been off the chocolate and I've been on the walking, trying to get the weight down. Just to manageable proportions before I have that massive heart attack, and it's meaning that I'm totally struggling with no chocolate to get me buzzing, and also knackered for the walks I've been doing, and it means my pods get longer because it's taking me longer to get to the point. I was struggling, never mind Red Star Belgrade, I was struggling to get Lyndon Dykes' name in the last pod I did, and I just watched him playing. I just watched him assisting a goal for Lawrence Shankland in the flesh about 2 days beforehand. The other thing I forgot to mention that pod, the last one, was Lawrence Shankland cost us nothing. This is quite an important part of the Lawrence Shankland transfer to Rangers. He cost us nothing in terms of a signing on fee. Shankland had a kind of, if Rangers registered an interest in me, I went to be at Ibrox training at Auchenhowie, showered and doing my first Rangers television interview before you've put the phone down, clause in his contract at Tynecastle. And I was the same at Torino. When I was at Torino, I'm saying to the manager, they're just, if Milan, any of the big Milan clubs or Juventus come in for me, fair enough, whatever price you can get. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man U, just whatever price you can get, that's fine. I'll go, and that thing. But if Rangers come in, never mind Walter Casagrande and Martin Vasquez, Lentini. I don't know what the other agreement says. Pasquale Bruno, ironically, who goes to Hearts. He was in the same team as me at the time, but I just said, if Rangers come here, I'm going for nothing, and I'm going straight away. You're booking me a taxi to the airport. I'm just going straight away. So I get what Lawrence Shankland has done there. This is it's a great thing. Failing to mention either of these kind of Shankland wanting to come so badly, and we get him for nothing. I failed to mention either of these very closely related thing, because yes, it means it is a win for us from an economic point of view. Buying a 31-year-old would be seriously dodgy. He's going to be 31 in August. A seriously dodgy outlay if we'd had to buy him, yes. But what's most important about this is how deeply it demonstrates the fact that Lawrence Shankland isn't just a Scot. We want more Scots in the team. He's not just an SPFL savvy player. He's not just the leader that we want to have in the team now. He's not just a captain of the previous club he was at, as Danny Röhl had specified. He's not just a proven expert in his field of scoring goals. Lawrence Shankland, it proves he doesn't just get it, but he is it. He is it. He's the most oven-ready signing we have made, and it's no cost the club a premium. Yeah, we should have got him last season. Some folks say seasons before that. But he spent last season basically doing the Rangers thing of fighting like hell to finish second behind Celtic. So he's more than ready for the coming season. He's a fucking blue nose to his core, is what I'm saying. This is something I'm sceptical about a lot of times when it comes to the usefulness of a player. I'm a blue nose to my core, and it looks like I probably won't ever play for Rangers. And I shouldn't be allowed to either. Let's be honest. It's something I'm sceptical about until the moment it happens like this. I'm absolutely psyched. He didn't want a big move to a big club. Lawrence Shankland, his entire career has been about signing for Rangers. And that career, up to and including the last 2 Saturdays of international friendlies, has proved him to be the most shoe-in solid signing we've probably made for years. Another item I didn't mention in the last podcast, which I should have, was Tom English on Radio Scotland. I was going back for the Curaçao game in the car, and I'm just stuck on Radio Scotland, just going through the Clyde Tunnel, and he's got the boy, I think it was Radio Scotland's at Kenny McIntyre. They do this thing where they might talk to fans, and it's usually podders or whatever. They're talking to get a chance to do that with Gersnet, but I really didn't want to because I feel as if they're just going to take the piss out of you mainstream media, just treating you like a guinea pig. Oh, you're one of those mad fans that we're supposed to actually be running this entire programme for, but we're still going to somehow patronise you and exploit your genuine love of your club and your natural bias. And basically kind of take the piss. So I wasn't really ever up for that. But I admire the guys who are doing it. Very eloquent fella from, I think this is Ibrox. I recognise his voice. Very clever, very comes across really well. But he wasn't very enthusiastic about Steve Clarke being Scotland manager. Despite we're heading off to World Cup in Great Fetto, our first World Cup in 28 years. And he was getting asked, but why not? What's the problem? I just don't like the way he plays football. It's very boring. I think the players are getting too old and stuff like that. And I wasn't convinced. And I'm starting to think to myself, is this because of the thing Steve Clarke said on the pitch at Rugby Park back in 2019? Is this the classic, I think I've heard that a lot of Rangers supporters fucking hate that Steve Clarke. And I'm thinking, no, surely no. But then Tom English was in the studio, and he's the kind of prick that's definitely going to say that. Not going to resist that opportunity. So when he said it, what I was thinking, when Tom English said what I was thinking, I was, hypocritically raging, shut up you. And he says to the fella, is this because the only Scotland fans I know that don't like Steve Clarke are Rangers supporters. I don't know why we have to like him. I've said it before. I don't know why we have to like the guy. And in fact, he's a bit of a prick. He is a bit of a prick, Steve Clarke, but in the best possible way. And that's exactly what the Scotland national team needs. It's a horrendous job, and it's definitely working. But this idea, basically, he's just trying to say it's sectarian. Tom English is sectarian, and I know from a lot of Rangers supporters that it is for a lot of them. So from a few that I actually know can actually vouch for directly. It all goes back to the Knights 2018-19 season. I think it would be January 2019. Rangers are beating Kilmarnock 5-0 in a Scottish Cup replay. I think Kilmarnock had the goalie sent off, had to replace their goalie or something. They definitely were down to 10 men anyway. Turned the game into a bit of a no contest. And as the game's winding down, because it was a replay, short notice, not in the season ticket, there wasn't a very big crowd there. So it was a kind of worse, it was a slight version of that thing you get at the juniors, or so the non-league football, where the smaller crowd, if somebody shouts something at the referee or at a particular player, it's more personal almost, because there's so little other noise to distract from it, and you know that the person it's aimed at has definitely heard it, has no choice, and it makes it so much worse. It was a version of that because it was only the Union Bears who at that point were up in just young boys, stupid wee boys. They were at that point. They're all grown up now and they're very mature, and apart from the ones that run about, there's only 100 or so running about the city centre the other night, had been taken in by Elon Musk and all that nonsense, but there's thousands of them, But a few of the Union Bears start singing, "Cheer up, Steve Clarke." You can't be singing this. I don't know if it's because my mum knows Steve Clarke's mum. Steve Clarke is he's a few years older than me, but no, he's for Saltcoats, I'm for Ardrossan. The tune next door, my mum's for Saltcoats, my dad's for Ardrossan. I don't know if it's all that makes it. It shouldn't make any difference, though, but it makes it even more personal and even more embarrassing. But round about me, Rangers fans from all different parts of the world, never mind Scotland, I could hear them all going, "Oh no," because it was nobody else was singing it. It was just a few dozen of the Union Bears. It was obviously just something they'd thought up, and I'm thinking, you're not going to see this right through. You're not going to sing this song right to the end. Sad Fenian bastard, and it was fucking horrible. It was horrible in a way that it should always be horrible when you're using that kind of language. But this was just so much worse. And yes, Steve Clarke did use it to distract from the result afterwards, and that's why Scotland needs him. Like the same way he used an Argentinian referee for the game against Hungary that saw us get eliminated for the last Euros. He went on and on about that excessively. But in this case, even if he is using it as an excuse, the way he was using it was obviously coming for the heart. And it should, because it's fucking shameful from our point of view. I was embarrassed. It was a disgusting thing to do. I remember Steve Clarke in that post-match press conference in the Bills of Ibrox giving it. Thank God every day that most of my career was in England and my kids were brought up in England away from this garbage. What day and age is it? We're in the 21st century and I'm still getting called a Fenian bastard. So what Steve Clarke does at the end of that same season, Kilmarnock beat us last day of the season. Fucking Steven Gerrard puts out a weekend team, which I still haven't forgiven him for, because that day, if we'd won that day, we'd have won for the first time ever all of our post-split fixtures. Nearly lost all of them this time. At the end of the season, just past there. But we get beat 2-1, and it's on Sky, and Steve Clarke's doing it's the last game of the season. He's addressing the Kilmarnock fans on the pitch. It's been a great season. They finished third, I think, that season. It's a qualifying for Europe and all that. It's a fantastic season for Kilmarnock. So they get manager on day and a week, and he just says, "Oh, the Rangers fans, we've bolted." For the I was watching it on telly, but the Rangers fans on the ground have bolted because they've got beaten at shit, as you do. And he's talking to Kilmarnock fans, and he just goes, "Bye bye Rangers." I don't know what the context was, but it's just an excuse to go bye bye. That's all he said. He's having a go, aye. He's been a wind up merchant, but he fucking earned that right. He wasn't calling us dirty Hun bastards or anything like that. What we'd done to him, like what we'd done to him. So I had no problem whatsoever with what Steve Clarke did that day. And as far as I'm concerned, that we should be actually saying to Steve Clarke, are you happy? Is that enough? Is that you even? Are we? Because he owes us a lot more than that as a club, as a Rangers support. So I don't have a problem with that at all. Apart from anything else, I think he's definitely earned his extension to his contract with the Scotland national team. If he hasn't, who has? And also, it stops him getting the Celtic job. I was quite scared that Steve Clarke was going to go and do the Celtic job after this, because he'd be a really good Celtic manager. But I think we think about all the abuse that Alec McLeish and Walter Smith took when they were Scotland manager, and Rangers players, and the abuse Rangers players have taken in the past few years, and we get really sensitive about that as a support. That's why we hate the Tartan Army. That's why I'm not in the Tartan Army. I'm just a Scotland supporter. But to then perpetuate the same thing, you've got to think about that. We hate Steve Clarke, even though he's got us to €2 and the World Cup. We weren't qualifying for anything until this guy came in. So I've got no problem at all with Steve Clarke, and I'm embarrassed that anybody would. Now, if folks still don't think Steve Clarke's a good manager and he's not good enough for Scotland, that's fine. If it's a football-based thing, that's absolutely fine. I can't say for sure why any other supporters would have a problem with Steve Clarke. I know that out with the Rangers supporters, plenty of arseholes who aren't interested in the Scotland national team, who only get interested when we get to major finals, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is shite," and then they start ranting and raving about the manager because they've just got involved with football. Their opinions don't count as far as they can be just written off, as far as I'm concerned. But if you're going to have a problem with Steve Clarke because he's Catholic, if you're going to and you can't have a problem for the way all he ever did to us was just be a bit of a fuck off. That's more. That's nowhere near what we did to him at Ibrox that night. So I'm afraid. And the other snagging item, Red Star Belgrade. I said they were the only team. I said no team in red and white stripes had ever won the European Cup or the Champions League. Red Star Belgrade absolutely did. Luckily, we do a 2.5 hour podcast. Nobody is watching it anyway. So the World Cup, yeah, whoa. It's Mex-Can-Usa. Canada, USA, Mexico, 2026 World Cup, the 23rd FIFA World Cup. A lot of reasons. Number one, the political aspect. The political aspect becomes 1 and 1A. You've got actual fact of having it in the USA with everything that's going on there with Donald Trump. And then that goes into the football politics of Gianni Infantino being president of FIFA. A cunt, a grade A cunt. Just scum, absolute vermin. Both him and Trump, a match made in hell. So it's Gianni Infantino, we saw today, he's competing, of course, with Cheferin at UEFA, and this the slimiest thing, the most kind of snidey moment. Yeah, even though I fully approve of it, Cheferin just taking the referee who's been not allowed, he's been denied access to USA because the anti-immigration stuff, just again appealing to the right wing, just it's power grab stuff. It's nothing to do with any kind of morality or whatever. It's just looking for the lowest common possible denominator to embolden his voting base, keep himself in power, Donald Trump, so he doesn't get put down for being basically a rapist. He's already been found to be, a rapist in a court of law, and he's trying to sue the judge, I think, that did that. The political angle, we've got players being denied entry to the USA. We have a referee being denied entry to the USA. We've got supporters being denied entry to the USA and most of the games are getting played there. In this World Cup, immigration customs enforcement is just a modern day Gestapo. They are the Gestapo. It's simple as that. You watch, it's all over the internet. You watch footage of immigration customs control just giving a bunch of kind of coked up, roided up. The guys that have got the beer gut and the bulk and the muscles because they can't stop. They need their sweeties to keep themselves properly functioning in life, but need to get a bit of bulk up as well. Armed to the teeth, wearing masks, like cowardly scumbags, and just been given license by this excuse for a government to go about and lift people off the street for being the wrong colour. Simple as that. They'll worry about the paperwork later. I couldn't go to this World Cup. I could not. I've been to the final of Scottish Cup, Scottish Junior Cup, Scottish Amateur Cup, Scottish League Cup. Been to the final of the Europa League. Also, 2 UEFA Cup finals. Let's call that Europa League. I've been to the final of the Champions League final. I've been to the opening game of World Cup. I've been to the Euros, quarters, finals, semi-finals. I've been to the final of the Euros, the biggest one. I've got to get to a Conference League final. I'd like to go to the Super Cup match as well. But the big one, of course, is the World Cup. I've been to the opening game of the World Cup, but I've never been to the final, and I probably never will get. It's really, apart from anything else, that's one reason why FIFA are bastards, because the people who keep football going are the last ones that are ever going to get a ticket for the biggest matches. We're the people who deserve this. Rangers will move us. Rangers will move Rangers fans out of their season ticket seats during Champions League games and big European matches, just to get in corporate cunts. It's horrific the way this thing happens, and but if somebody offered me a ticket for free for this World Cup final, I would not go. I wouldn't get my arse over there for the final of this World Cup, because apart from anything else, I'd be arrested. They're checking your social media stuff as well to see if you approve of this government, a Trump's government, and I really don't, and I make it quite plain on social media because I'm just that brave. I'll do it over a phone. I've been to the States. I love the States. I love the USA. Like, the government is not the people. It rarely is. There's a lot of people who are sharing in Trump's views. They're not even views. It's just an itch in your balls turned into policy. But I remember being in Nashville. What a time we had in Nashville. The people, phenomenal. We drove all about to Georgia and Scotland and Charlotte and North Carolina. North Carolina with Alan Marciano. Been smuggling up cigarettes from North Carolina up to New Jersey. That's how Vincent Hanna and Al Pacino, that's how they get in, because he's seeing Charlene Shaheerless, Chris Shaheerless's wife, seen her on the side, and that's how they hack into All I Want Is a Husband and his whole fucking crew. And that's quite. I went to North Carolina, went to Cherokee as well, which strictly speaking is North Carolina, it's a Cherokee Nation kind of thing. But I stayed there. It's a great time in the States the last time. I've been to New York a couple of times, went to Boston, been to Chicago for a week. We did the whole Nashville, Dollywood thing, and drove about the States, drove about that part of the States, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, etc. It was phenomenal. But I remember the airport, back to Nashville, and leaving at the airport, just sitting in the waiting, sitting in the, and a fella sitting, and I remember thinking, because we're all bored, just waiting for your flight to come in, you're checking in really early, and there's a guy sitting, and I remember thinking, and I'm not just saying this to embolden this, to make the story more woke or left wing or whatever like that. The guy looked like a professor. I've been to uni, believe it or not. I know a few folk that are intellectuals, basically, are lecturers or doctors, professors. I know a few of them, and he had that look. He was sitting reading a book, and just what he was wearing and the way he was carrying himself. Guy in his 50s into his 60s. I thought, you're a professor. He was also black, and I didn't really think about that until the airport police, are walking along, not doing anything, not bothering with anybody. I'm a big fat gammon-looking cunt sitting there, nothing. Don't say anything to me. And they just walked right up to one of the guys, just broke off, and he walked over at this fella who was just sitting a couple of seats along from me, and they're kind of waiting in the departure lounge. And I can help you with today, sir. And the guy he barely raised his eyes and looked at the guy, and he's just like, can I help you with anything today, sir? And he's like, no, I'm fine. Sorry? I'm fine, thanks. Oh, that's fine, sir. You have a great day. Have a nice day, sir. And the guy just looked. Doesn't it sound, when you write it down, when you relate that, what was actually said, doesn't it mean anything? It's arguably the most fundamentally racist thing I have ever seen in my fucking life. And some of the stuff the guys were saying to you, going through the airport and all that as well, the security folk and that were saying to you, was really dodgy. Obviously emboldened by and Biden was still in power at that point. But it was just real baseline, basic. You're black, and I fucking hate you, and I'm going to push you as far as I can to the point of winding you up. It was intimidation. It was, and I looked over at the fella, and he kind of looked at me as if to say, "Don't even fucking think about it, mate. You've no idea. I live with this shit on a daily basis." Because I was kind of open mouthed, and there's a lot of that stuff. Because see stuff in Scotland, but it's this. These people are now being told they'll get free license to do what they want in the streets of the US. They're murdering people. They're basically murdering people, and it's absolutely horrific. So there's no way I'd be going over there if I couldn't. Having a World Cup, it's almost like when you think about, and I think it was Blatter that awarded the World Cup to Qatar. Infantino just joined in. The World Cup going to, is it Mussolini's Italy in 1934, Pinochet's Chile in 1962, Argentina. They disappeared and all that. The torture chambers in Argentina under the junta, they can hear the stadium, the monumental stadium when Argentina win the World Cup final, infamously. It's just round the corner. Bolsonaro wasn't in power in Brazil in 2014, but he was certainly on the political scene there, and Putin is just a world terrorist. He is just the world's biggest terrorist just now, Vladimir Putin. So Russia, of course, gets the World Cup in 2018. In 2022, the migrant workers, construction workers building the stadiums and that are dying in their hundreds in Qatar, if not their thousands. Just basic kind of slavery almost in that country. Horrendous laws towards gay people and sex out of wedlock and this medieval stuff, and yet it's half the size of Wales, Qatar, and it gets a fucking World Cup finals, and we move it to December just because of junkets, just because it will make more money for Infantino, for all the people in control. It's a cartel, they're gangsters. The 2030 World Cup was amazing, doesn't it? Amazing, because Argentina and Uruguay wanted to host, and Uruguay particularly wanted the centenary World Cup, about 100 years. By 2030, the 100th anniversary of the first World Cup finals, which were in Uruguay. So Uruguay want to host the next ones. They want to host the one in 2030 as well. It seems appropriate. But they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the stadiums. It's quite easy to dismiss Uruguay and Argentina as well. Really financial problems in Argentina these days. But FIFA have got this cycle, where it goes around the various confederations, and Oceania is also rarely able to host the World Cup. So the Oceania Confederation is kind of discounted a lot of times. It misses it, even though Australia have joined the Asian Confederation. But it's UEFA, CONMEBOL, CONCACAF, and CAF, Africa. So we had it in South Africa, and Russia's considered Europe. But what they've done with this one, they had the World Cup in Qatar, and that's where you get, it's really difficult. A World Cup is a loss leader. Staging a World Cup as a loss leader, it really is only possible, I think, to make. You don't make money. You can't make money out of hosting a World Cup. It's the amount of it. I think most of the money probably gets wasted on bribing the FIFA officials, and then paying for their hotels and the prostitutes and that they want to get in and stuff like that, and their drugs, etc. But I think proper democratic leaders don't waste money on kind of loss leading vanity projects. So that's why you're going to places like sports washing places like Qatar for the World Cup, and Saudi Arabia are desperate for the World Cup as well, but it's like, we've just had it in Qatar. That's the Asian Confederation got it in 2022. So it goes to US CONCACAF that have got this World Cup, Mexico, Canada, USA, all in CONCACAF. Next World Cup is going to be in Europe. But what we'll do is we'll let Morocco, Portugal and Spain are going to co-host it, but Morocco's just across the water, basically. We'll have them, because Morocco they finished fourth in that last World Cup in Qatar there. So let's give the African nations, the North African nations, it's different culturally for South Africa, isn't it, the Maghreb. So we'll get them involved as well via Portugal and Spain. The odd Grenada, it's the Moors are coming back to the Iberian Peninsula. They would say that. But I think about it, Argentina and Uruguay, they've got quite a proper claim, I think they've got. So what we'll do is, they can't host the main bulk of the World Cup, but we'll give them a game each. Right? And for some reason, Paraguay were at the first World Cup in 1930, but didn't do anything great. So for some reason, they've decided Paraguay can host a game as well in 2030. So in 2030, you've got Portugal, Spain, Morocco, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, all 6 nations co-hosting that World Cup. But handily, what it means is 3 confederations, Africa, UEFA, and CONMEBOL have all been dealt with. They've all had their shot in a wanner straight back to 2034 World Cups in Saudi Arabia. Another fucking medieval animalistic scumbag government over there, but they've got plenty of money. You know, they need the sports washing, as we see the Newcastle and the various things they do. It's absolutely horrific, the people who are in control. But the problem we've got, it's like Jeff Bezos controlling Prime. You want stuff delivered for Christmas presents or birthday presents at short notice. You want to watch Amazon. I'm watching films on Amazon Prime. Now get BFI player through Amazon Prime. You know, that's Bezos. Scum. X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. We need it for your work now. It's so popular. That's how folk through my work get in touch with me a lot of the time. It's I've got to be on it. But Elon Musk's got that. And just spreading filth. You know, it's actual filth in terms of technology that can make Waynes naked for the benefit of pedos while he goes about trying to stir up racist shit as well. But that's if you want to stay in touch with folk, you've got to be on X. You know, Facebook as well, they're no far behind in terms of the scumbaggery that they're promoting as well. World Cups are no different. It's like anything that involves people's desire to socialise and just do stuff like or to help. It's why teachers and nurses are the ones that always get the harshest dealt with when it comes to pay and conditions and what have you, because they love doing the job. But yet the most important jobs, so football, we just want to believe in the beautiful game. We just want to socialise. That's fantastic. Anything like that, scum are attracted. Venal scum are automatically attracted to that like flies around shite. They can exploit the hell out of it. I know there's people I know who are, you think I'm kind of, but I'm not anyway really particularly ultra left wing. I'm basically just a bit left of centre, I would say, in terms of actual politics. But I've got friends of mine who are much further to the left who basically haven't watched the World Cup. Haven't watched the World Cup. They boycotted Russia, boycotted Qatar. You know, they've not seen the World Cup for ages, and now Scotland are back in it. It's going to be a real test of their mettle. I get the thing of boycotting the World Cup and the fact that the games are, I'm boycotting watching it on television as well. But the fact that a lot of the games are on at 5 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, our time, gives me an excuse to do a wee partial boycott. Plus, it's far too long a tournament now as well. But politically, it's absolutely horrible. They've got us by the balls, but it's almost like you would never have watched a World Cup if you wanted to. When Saturday comes is acknowledging the 2026 World Cup, so that kind of lets me off the hook. That's my bellwether. But kick-off times are convenient for a kind of partial boycott. Is it right to watch the World Cup? As I say, is it right to be on X? Is it right to be on Facebook? It's The Simpsons, it's Fox News. It's the same channel as Fox News. I don't know. Another point is it's only 3.5 years since the last World Cup. And prior to this, because it was a December World Cup, and prior to this, we had our second Euros in 3 years. International tournaments are getting bigger and more regular, all while the European club competitions expand to 3 tournaments instead of 2 per season. You know, this war between Ceferin and Infantino, this war between UEFA and FIFA, we're caught in the middle. You know, since 2021, 2022, 2 of the now 3 European club tournaments, we're now got 3 European club tournaments, but the past couple of seasons, 2 of those tournaments, the group stage is now 8 games as opposed to the 6. The Conference League, which is just a new tournament, is still 6 group games. But the other 2 is now 8 group games. All this while the English are about to expand the playoff system in the 3 divisions of the EFL. I don't know what's happening with the conference and what have you. They're going to these playoffs are really exciting that we have for promotion at the end of each season. What we'll do actually is we'll have so many games, we may as well just turn it into a bit of a round robin where everybody that's in the playoffs plays each other home and away, like a league. It's getting beyond the joke. There's actually no time to do anything else with your life. It's too much of a good thing. It's got to stop. The tournaments are too big. There's too many teams involved. It's the 23rd World Cup. All CONCACAF hosts for the 4th time, strictly speaking, because Mexico were the hosts in 1970, in 1986, and USA were the hosts in 1994. 3 times CONMEBOL champions, 3 different CONMEBOL champions ever in the World Cup, and 5 UEFA champions, 3 South American and 5 UEFA champions. That would be Brazil winning the thing 5 times, Uruguay twice, Argentina 3 times, England and Spain winning it once each. France winning it twice, and the Germans and the Italians winning it 3 times each. Why go West Germany, Germany? It's just the Deutscher Fußball, but it's all post-war. So it's the Deutscher Fußball, but like the German Democratic, like the German Federal Republic, it absorbed the DDR. The same with the FIT, but they just absorbed it as opposed to it being a different organisation. So it's the same thing, really. Germany have won it 4 times, the same as Italy. How many times do you watch a finals tournament? How many times do you watch a finals tournament? A World Cup finals or a Euros? Most of them haven't been featuring Scotland for most of my adult life. And you watch 1, sometimes 2, maybe 3 nations who just suddenly start excelling beyond all expectation. They suddenly start being absolutely brilliant in a way that nobody was expecting. You know, like Costa Rica playing England in a friendly last night. Costa Rica and England in the same group at the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. That group had England, Italy, and Uruguay and Costa Rica in it. Costa Rica were the only team in that group, the only nation that had never won the World Cup. It was 3 champions, former world champions in that group in Brazil. Costa Rica finished top of the group. And they go out in penalties to Dutch in a really exciting game in the knockouts as well. It's fantastic. Cameroon doing really well at Italia 90. Roger Mia, Romania doing really well in 1994. Bulgaria doing even better at USA 1994, getting to the semi-finals. What else? I'm trying to think of the ones I've done. I suppose Mexico always get to the quarterfinals when it's in their home country. You just get these teams that they really... Morocco, 2022, Morocco getting to the semi-finals of the last World Cup and thinking they should have got following that as well. Why is it never Scotland? Why is this never Scotland? Law of averages. We should just kind of explode at one tournament. And it's like Iceland at Euro 2016. Their first finals. And they end up beating England and they get... Why can't Scotland do that? The same as they just do that thing when you get to the quarterfinals through sheer esprit de corps and nobody really expecting us to be that great. And once we do really well, once we get out the group stage for the first time in our history, oh my God, we can't help ourselves. We don't know where to stop. And then you're 3-0 up against Portugal at Goodison Park, and eventually they beat you 5-3. But it's the same as Iceland against France. And you get, was it 5-3 or 5-2? France ends up beating Iceland. But you've got a few goals, and even in the game that you actually go out, you've performed quite well. You get brought back down to earth, but then you realise that was magical. That was the best ever. Why is it never Scotland? Law of averages. This is like our 13th major tournament. Surely we should date once. We've never been out the groups. This is my 13th World Cup, and I was around for the 70 and 74. I was around for 70 and 74, but I was alive for 1970 and 1974 World Cups. I was an infant. I don't really remember. I was too young to remember them. But starting your life of World Cups with Argentina 78 as a Scot, I don't know if that was the worst or the best thing that could ever have happened to me. I was 8 coming on 9 years old in Argentina 78. We had Alice Tartan, we bought the Andy Cameron record and all that, and on the other sides I want to be a punk rocker, the B-side's even better. This is great stuff. That was... Everybody's going crazy for Scotland. They're going to do something major at the 78 World Cup, majorly because England didn't qualify. Well, they're in a high. But I don't know if it actually killed me or it made me stronger, with that being the first World Cup finals that I ever really properly remember. I don't know if it's properly inducing me and inducting me, and not just the kind of underachievement, but the hubris of our national team, maybe even our national game, maybe even the thing of being Scottish, just as a whole. So I could take it. So going forward, I was strong. I was ready for all the humiliations you'd get, following the Scotland national team or caring about the Scotland national team and various other things in Scotland. Or maybe it just kicked the positivity out of me at the first available opportunity. Like if I'd just been a wee bit older and I'd remember the 1974 World Cup in West Germany, where we went out in the tournament without losing a game, first team ever to do that, that would have been equally gutting. I would have got the glorious failure thing, but I'd also got the pride. I'd also at least got a wee taste of the pride. 78 just made sure that positivity became a toxic thing as far as I was concerned. It's a really strange thing. Like my dad was like 20 years old, 20 years and a few days after his 20th birthday that I came along, that I was born. And I remember 1978, of course, I remember sitting watching the games and watching us taking the lead against Peru, and then thinking, why are they scoring 3 goals against us? They're crap. I mean, Peru had got to quarterfinals in 1970. No, they went out to the great 1970 Brazil team in Mexico. I mean, Cubillas, who's scoring the goals against us that night, he's one of the greatest players ever in the history of the World Cup. It's his third World Cup. He's scoring goals regularly in World Cups. I don't know why. It's just so bloody insular at the time. I was only a kid at the time, but we get beat 3-1. And I remember the game against Iran, sitting watching that, and I've always been into my football pennants, and I was making a Scotland pennant. I was making one at that point in time, sitting in the wee coffee table we had in the living room, watching the game against Iran, and I had wee bits of A4 paper, and I was sellotaping the girl to make it a big one, and cutting a bit into a triangle-shaped bit at the bottom, and I was sellotaping it all together at the back, wee bit of string at the top and the front. This is during the game. Scotland, I mean, we went 1-0 up through an own goal, but Iran equalised, and it was just, we were woeful. And I'm doing Scotland, world champions, 1978 on the front of it, and I'm going, Dad, would you think? And fair enough, he didn't just drop kick me through the window and down to the beach in a dress in there, but he just, I remember thinking, it wasn't a very enthusiastic reply there from my father. I think I might have been insulting my intelligence at some point. I thought Scotland were world champions. I thought we were going to win this thing. It's just a temporary inconvenience en route to ultimate glory here in Argentina. And I remember knowing how many goals we needed to score. We needed to beat the Dutch by so many goals to get through the game on the Sunday night. And my mate Alan Frew, who's in the house across the road, we were waving back and forth to each other every time there was a goal. And we're PJs, And that's it, we're at the World Cup. But I was young. I'm in primary school at that point in time. I knew what was going on. I can still remember watching these games. But it didn't really kick in because I was still, it's all very exciting, the World Cup and football and stuff like that. But it must have kicked in pretty soon afterwards, like realising how humiliating it was and all that, but it just being the only World Cup that I had in my mind for 4 very formative years. By the time we got to 1982, when I'm 12 on the cusp of 13, my birthday's in July, that's the problem here. My birthday's kind of into July, so World Cups are just before a birthday usually for me that they take place. So I'm 12, coming up in 13, quite an age, during the 1982 World Cup, and we kick off that World Cup against New Zealand. It was during the week. I remember it, evening game, and we're 3-0 up after 32 minutes. And my father, so he's like 32, coming up 33. Him and his best mate, Michael, they're sitting in the living room, just the three is sitting in the living room watching it. And they're like, obviously just dying for a drink, maybe just the excuse for the drink. But I remember my dad being, this is in the bit, and Michael, this is 3-0 already. Superb. I think we'll crack a drink open. I think we'll crack a wee drink open. I mean, they'd already been drinking cans or something probably. But it was, open the whiskey, here we go, ho-ho. And I remember sitting there thinking, what the fuck are you? I was hardened. I was the most mature guy in the room at that point. And my father is like one of the most cynical folk. I mean, that right hard life, right hard upbringing. His dad died when he was really young and all that kind of stuff. And, 4 sisters and blah, blah, blah. All that's a real hard. My dad was no mug about anything. And but the Fitba, he's just, yes, here we go. But that was the thing. They were only young men. For them, they would probably remember 1950, Scotland being the 58 World Cup. And no being that bad. The 58 World Cup didn't win a game, but didn't get hammered in any of them. And they'd just be glad. But they were at Wembley, 67, the two of them, when we beat the world champions. In 1964, they're like 14, 15 when Dennis Law is becoming the Ballon d'Or. So they're probably thinking, yeah, finally it's happening. It's a few years later and we want to beat this, as Scotland should be doing this. Whereas I'm sitting thinking, why are you getting enthusiastic? Enthusiasm is what kills us. Ali McLeod, we're going to come back with some sort of medal. That's what kills us. So when New Zealand came out in the second half and scored 2 goals and suddenly it's 3-2, and they're going, what the fuck's happening here? I'm thinking, what's happening here? What the fuck's happening here? You two get carried away. You thought it was in the bag after half an hour. Have you never watched us before? It's a really, really strange thing, how it affects you depending on how, the life affects you depending on when that life began for you. And then the 1982 World Cup, of course, I give up on Scotland. Scotland go out of that World Cup, but we always have a cliche of guys my age just now as well. It's been done to death to the point where it's so boring. But that was the Brazil team. We all then put our hopes on that Brazil team just to do it for football. I already had a thing going with the Germans from Euro 1980, and just a really strange interest in the Second World War. But somehow I felt sorry for the Germans because they'd been completely devastated. I don't know, I was just young. But it's a thing I maintain to this day, and the Germans are my second team. I always slag folk, like Kilmarnock supporters and Dunfermline supporters, and that, they're always in your face going, just glory hunters. You Rangers supporters are just glory hunters. But they've always got a second team. And it's always somebody like Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, something like that, who they do go and see quite a lot. I think, I don't have a second team, it's Rangers, and that's it for me. Winton Rovers, but it's a different entity altogether, a different world. But I was the same with the Scot, because I remember when Brazil get put out by Italy. I mean, it's been done to death. I'll maybe talk about it later on this World Cup, just why we all fell in love with that Brazil team in '82. And it was just a harsh lesson, but it was a crossroads in my life already, at not even 13 years old, thinking I could give up on football here. I could just give up on it altogether. I need to find why Brazil deserve to lose to Italy. I need to find why Italy are actually great, despite having been boring as fuck in the qualifying, the first round of this World Cup. I need to find why it's sensational, why they're good, so I can still be in love with football. It really was a horror. It's been a hard life through World Cups for Scotland supporters of my age, and here we are going back into it, and I don't know. We played Bolivia. Bolivia, who played, we played the opening game of 1998 World Cup. Well, Bolivia, they also lost the opening game of the 1994. They lost the opening game of the previous World Cup to the holders, of course, by a single goal, as we did in 1990 when Diana Ross missed that free kick. She missed that penalty. Missed that penalty. And that was Klinsmann scored the only goal of the game. Diana Ross missed a chance to get Bolivia back into it. The goals kind of fell apart on it. She still missed. That was at Soldier Field, Chicago. And Chicago's where the original story that Heat is based on happened. The actual real life story, that the real life Neil McCauley was killed in Chicago by Chuck Adamson, and he wrote, or he helped Michael Mann write the screenplay for Heat, which they set in LA. So LA is where the USA play their opening game against Paraguay in this World Cup. So it's just the whole Heat thing with Inglewood. The whole Heat thing is it's been paid attention to by this World Cup. I do appreciate that. But there's Bolivia, same kind of level as us, really, aren't they? In World Cups, and we just blew them away, As a warm-up for us, I mean, the viewing public back home, I think it was just as vital for us as it was for the Scotland team, because Scotland are getting acclimatised to the heats and playing in North American stadiums and playing against quite exotic opposition as well. We're getting used to the fact that we're going to sit up late on a Saturday night. We start off with a 9 o'clock kick-off on a Saturday night just to get us into the way of acclimatised to it being a 2 o'clock in the morning kick-off for our first actual game against Haiti this Sunday morning. It's a very Hogmanay vibe to it. So I'm hoping that the body clock of the Scotland team will get their natural body clock. All the years they've had, even as kids, of having to stay up, in the last day of December into the first day in January. For us, it's that thing, can you stay sober enough to actually remember the bells and to get in after? I'm surprised the BBC, that probably kills the BBC to advertise it. I don't know, is it on BBC, is it on STV, the first game against Haiti? I don't know, but it'll be advertised as, you have to advertise it as Sunday morning too, but it's really a Saturday night. It's a late Saturday night, isn't it? They should just go the whole hog, whoever's presenting it, and get Jackie Bird to present. So I hope that's an advantage for the Scotland team, that they're used to the stuff. Their body clock will tell them it's really late at night. They'll still be on GMT, and they're used to staying up late. You've done that one to death, Alec. Just forget that. Look, sorry, if there's kids in the room, I'll just get them out. Because obviously me using the C word quite liberally throughout this podcast has probably got them out of the room already. But maybe even your missus is there. I just want to talk to the guys here. Just want to talk to the guys. Kind of mano. Get yourself some kind of privacy before I go into this, folks. I think the spark has gone when every Saturday night, for me it's been every Saturday night since late December, the wife just says, I'm complaining about the fact that she's broke it. She's just use a spoon. Just use a spoon. It's not even a turkey. It's very cold. It's very harsh. But then on Saturday night, she's been in the town Saturday afternoon. She's been in the town doing a bit of shopping, and she comes in and she says to me, "Oh, you like this? I like this. I've got a wee something to liven things up, to get things going again. A wee kind of toy, almost pump at one end, a long shaft. It's transparent as well. It's got measurements. It's got measurements down the side, so you can actually measure the length and the end of it. The end's stuck up to a wee kind of bit. It goes up at the end. The wee spout bit. So if you slap it onto the worktop in the kitchen, the juices will only come out the end and go into the. It's the baster. The baster should go. I've got a angled baster with cleaning brush by Oxo Good Grips. Oxo Good Grips. It's changed my life because she smashed the one in December. I might have been actually using it to baste the turkey. I only have a turkey at Christmas. But I have a roast chicken every week. That's why I'm the size I am. I have a roast chicken, a full roast chicken to myself every weekend. Saturday or Sunday, depending when I'm at a game. Depending when the fit was on, I'll have it the other day. And that's what but since December, I've had to use a spoon to baste it. And you're touching the chicken, you're hurting yourself and all that because you can't get in the bacon tray thing. And I said, where's my baster? You broke my baster because she was washing it and she dropped it and she turned around to find what it was and she stood on it and she smashed it. And she didn't replace it. She didn't replace it. So I've been using this thing. But finally, the weekend there, she came in and it just... Oh my God! I was in there. It took half an hour longer than usual to cook because I was in. Probably that's the packet for it up there, and you get the brush as well, the long brush, which just gets right in there to clean it properly. You don't put this in the dishwasher; you do this manually to clean that to make sure it's ready for the following Saturday. The juice isn't dribbling out. There's something changed. Things started to look up, like the wee knobble in the end of it that stops the juice flowing out onto the bottom. It's got a stand. It's angled. It's on a wee stand. So when you sit it in the worktop, the previous one, much as I miss it, I'd set it down a plate or something that would roll around because it's got the round pump thing at the end and it would roll about the plate and all that, causing an absolute mess. And also a wee bit of grease coming at the end of it. They've thought of this. Oxo Good Grips have thought of this. And it just sits there on the worktop. I was just looking at it for ages, for hours and hours. But I'd have the chicken out the oven longer than I should. It was double basting it and I just really enjoying getting in every crevice right up the chicken's arse and everything. It was fantastic. But I had that new baster and I had the chicken... as a result, taking a few years later, in the Saturday there, Scotland, and they kind of oven hot temperatures of New Jersey, roasted and basted and put a crispy finish on Bolivia. On Bolivia. A CONMEBOL nation. The Saturday before that, I'd been watching us playing Curaçao. On my way to the Curaçao game, I come down Bolivar Terrace. You come out the back, you cut off Cathcart Road and you walk up past New Cathkin Park, up to the top of Prospect Hill Road and Mary Queen of Scots and all that, and you drop down Bolivar Terrace to the back of the Celtic end of the North Stand. And that is Bolivar Terrace, that steep drop there. It's murder walking back out the way. And for years I've noticed the plaque that's at the top of it, and the kind of villa house at the top of it, it's Sandstone Villa, and it says Bolivar. It's after Simon Bolivar, the guy who liberated from Bolivia, Peru, Venezuela. Venezuela is actually called the Bolivian Republic of Uruguay. The currency is the Bolivar. This is after Simon Bolivar, who's one of the Libertadores. The Libertadores Cup, their version, the South American version of the Champions League, is named after the liberators, the guys who liberated. There's various guys, it's around about the late 1700s, early 1800s, Spanish and Portuguese rule in Portugal, in Brazil, and all these other various, Ecuador and that kind of stuff. They liberated, they hunted the colonial powers out of there, and they took over. Just a bit like the American Revolution a few years later, but they did all that. They're known as the liberators, and probably chief among them is Simon Bolivar, who was ruler of Bolivia. The country Bolivia is named after him. I'm walking down Bolivar Terrace to Hampden, as I have done so many times, and in the following Saturday, Scotland are pumping Bolivia, named after him. We've got a terrace named after your country, and we've pumped it. I think it's the first time we've ever played Bolivia. Of course, don't have that game at Hampden Derby, so I can't get them off the list. But they're wearing their army green kind of shirts, Bolivia. They haven't qualified for the World Cup, right? They missed out, CONMEBOL, and they qualified, so they're a bit of a downer. It's a kind of an awkward friendly for them, but we're beating one of the Libertadores Cup. It's so they can say, fuck you, Europe. We're naming our European Cup. We're naming our Continental Club, trophy, the top club trophy, after the guys who get rid of the Europeans. It's quite a boot to the boys, the Libertadores Cup for Scotland, before we even get to the Intercontinental Cup final. But we beat Bolivia. And there's guys sitting with Celtic tops. The Celtic tops, it's got the green and white hoops. It does stand out. Say what you like about it. It does stand out. You're thinking, why are they wearing Celtic tops to a Scotland game? It is New Jersey, That is the other side of the world, and to be fair, just remember there's plenty of Rangers tops here. They don't stand out the same way. And if I did see somebody in a Rangers top, I'd probably say, stay wearing a Rangers top, that's quite good. It's just total hypocrisy. That was annoying. But the army green of Bolivia, they're going to be fun. It just reminded me, it was kind of catharsis. 10 years ago, we go to Metz, Scotland go to Metz in June 2016, but just before Euro 2016 is about to take place in France, hosted by France. We play the hosts. It was in a friendly, beat us 3-0, probably going on 10-0, whatever. We haven't qualified for this thing. Half of Europe, it's been expanded to 24 teams. Only there's 55 UEFA nations, and we failed to qualify still. Haven't been to major finals since 98, since the last one in France at that point. So we must have been in the airport leaving France as the two islands, England and Wales, were all arriving in France for the finals. I just fucking saw this. But here, it's Bolivia. We're doing the same thing. We did to Bolivia what happened to us in France in 2016. I needed that. We just scalped them. And the fact we made so many substitutions in the second half, it was efficient. We did it properly. The only reason we didn't extend the scoreline in the second half was because we put on our second stringers. We made 11 changes or whatever. It was absolutely tremendous just to watch us doing this. We pumped Bolivia in the Americas. Scotland versus South Americans. I think we've only got Venezuela to play. I think it's Red Bull in the New Jersey, New York Metro Stars stadium there. Red Bull in the seats. It wasn't a very big crowd there, so you could see the Red Bull logo on the seats opposite the cameras, and they're yellow and they're pink. It's a yellow and pink logo, and it's making you think of the Rosebery colours again that we played in. We didn't play in them, but the whole crowd was wearing it against Curaçao the previous Saturday. Just all linked up. Really nice. I kept thinking it was the Cornea El Prat Stadium, Espanyol's ground, but because it looks so tidy, a proper football stadium. But no, it's in New Jersey. It's in New York, Red Bull's stadium. If Danny Röhl thinks Ryan Naderi can be our Thomas Muller, then according to a Rangers Review thumbnail that I saw on the internet, then Lauren Shankland must be his Gerdie Muller. Lauren Shankland must be his Gerdie Muller. And Gerd Muller's my all-time World Cup hero. 14 goals he scored in total in the World Cup finals. A record that was taken over by Ronaldo, Fat Ronaldo, the phenomenon in Germany. In the Westfalen, he actually went past it. He went to 15 goals. It was against Japan, against Ghana. I went and watched it in the Admiral, of all places, the Boozer. Just close to my work at the time. In the Town Centre, I went to watch that game just to see. I'd been to the opening game of that very World Cup, and there was my hero. I met Gerd Muller. There was my hero's record getting taken away in the Westfalen, which I think, not just the Westfalen, but there's the Rote-Erde Stadium that's right next to it. The old Borussia Dortmund Stadium, the Westfalen built for the '74 World Cup, the Westfalen that Ibrox is modelled on. Willie Waddle went to see it. But that's where Gerd Muller scored the most goals he scored. I think Borussia Dortmund was his club that he scored most club goals against in his career at Bayern, just his career full stop. Certainly, I think away to Borussia Dortmund was the most goals he scored on the road against any one club. Was away, a bit like Tavernier or Morelos against Aberdeen. Just always scored against them. And here it was the very same stadium. Ronaldo in Dortmund was taking the record off Gerd Muller. Went to 15 goals total for the World Cup finals. Now I went to 2000. I'd already seen what was happening. I'd already been and seen the overtaking, the comeback, the Reconquista, the opening game of that very World Cup in Munich. And Gerd Muller was on the pitch at the start of the opening ceremony in the 2006 World Cup. Miroslav Klose, he scored a goal that game against Costa Rica, the only World Cup finals match I've been at. He scored against Costa Rica, Miroslav Klose, and that was going towards his total. We didn't know he was going to get the total. And it's like, so you come to Germany to take the record off Gerd Muller? Well, we'll go to Brazil and we will play Brazil well taken, and we scalped Brazil 7-1. Said the Germans, I'm not saying I'm German, but Miroslav Klose, he takes the record back off Brazilians in Brazil against that World Cup semi-final in 2014. He goes to 60. Anyway, so that was it. Must be, he's like Gerd Muller anyway. That's 3 goals he's scored in 2 games, all different finishes. Scored by a header against Bolivia, did Lauren Shankland. Compare him to Gerd Muller, is getting ahead of himself. No, Che Adams of Torino, just like Dennis Law, he's played for Torino. He's getting even better alongside Lauren Shankland. Scott McTominay adding to his tally as well in that game against Bolivia. When you remember that our highest ever goal scorers, Ken Dalglish and Dennis Law, stuck in 30 goals. That's the highest. Harry Kane's looking for his 80th goal for England. His next goal will be his 80th goal for England. With 30 goals, our historic highest goal scorers. The fact that we've got a number of players who now have around double figures. John McGinn, if he needs 3 more goals for Scotland to go outright 4th on his own. He's got 20 goals for Scotland. Next up is Laurie Riley, also of Hibs, on 22 goals for Scotland. So he needs 3 more goals to bypass Laurie Riley. It's amazing in my lifetime that somebody's on 20 goals for Scotland. I saw Ken Dalglish scoring his 30th, but we're so poor at scoring goals, Scotland. That could be the heart of our problems historically, but because it's so bad, to have a number of players we have now in double figures and getting towards double figures is impressive. I think Ryan Christie, that goal he scored against Curaçao from the penalty spot, I think it was his 10th goal for Scotland. It's like a World Cup record versus a World Cup kind of immediate ambition. It's only impressive compared to how shit we've been for so long. But right now, we'll take it. It's good to have a lot of guys who've got an eye for goal in the team. That's very handy, especially when we're centre halves struggling a bit. Those years of learning not to get carried away, not to expect too much, because those who do are the first to desert the national team. It doesn't work. When it doesn't work, the people who are saying, "Oh, Scotland, we're going to win." If I see one mere person get interviewed in an airport going, "We'll definitely beat Brazil," no, I'm only joking. Or we're going to go all the way to the final. I'm only joking. Change the pattern. Please just change the pattern. But those years along, learning not to get carried away, not to expect too much, because those who do are the first to desert the national team when it doesn't work, and they leave us worse off than ever. It has hardened me to the point where I'm straight on to it being just about us getting out of the second round. That's all I'm thinking about. Saint Etienne in 1998, a stupid kind of football tourist flatmate, she was at the final whistle. She's just going, you couldn't have known, because the news came through that Norway had beaten Brazil, so we wouldn't have gone through anyway, even if we hadn't beaten Morocco, which we never looked like doing in that game. I was even saying it. I'd said to her a few nights before, she'd gone, just beat Morocco and that's us through. Her and her boyfriend were talking, and I'm saying, well, as long as Norway don't beat Brazil, well, Norway can't beat Brazil because I know that Brazil are great when it comes to football. And of course they did beat them. But it was a horrible night. She told me I never even brought it up. Just remember this thing of, you just guessed, you just happened to be right. Okay, we've all got different ways of sharing our pain, but it's the tourists are the worst when it comes to these things. I was watching Jim Leighton throwing it into the back of his net and keep my mouth shut as other football tourist friends around me at that time, kind of late student days. A lot of us gathering in flats to watch these games, and they were declaring their shock at how it's imploded like that, how the Scotland dream had just been so shattered so embarrassingly, and they wondered why I was thankful that Norway, Tor Andrew Flo this time, had beaten Brazil in the same group the same night, because it ameliorates a far worse pain. The pain of Scotland being unlucky, being glorious failures. Since then, the only thing glorious about our World Cup failure is its extent, its length, its level and duration, but they still find ways to drag you into that lethal hope, Scotland. Even me, hardened against it, grown up just knowing that the worst thing Scotland can have is hope. I can't help it. Remember the Lee Griffiths scored those 2 goals against England at Hampden, was that 2017, the 2018 World Cup qualifiers. I was thinking that's fine. At least we won't get hammered in this game now. We're going mental. Let's be honest. Even though it was Lee Griffiths, it was just absolutely stunning. Particularly the second one, the place just totally lost it. And I was there. I was up in the back of the front of the main stand, and I ended up doing the very front of the main stand, the pitch side. It was incredible. But you knew there was a long way to go. You knew this was Scotland, and then Stuart Armstrong's gone through on goals. He's clearing through, and he's a really cultured player, Stuart Armstrong. Particularly at that point, you're thinking he had options to his left, I think, but he went right. And I remember thinking, this is it, it's 3-1, we've won this game. This is going to be amazing, we've won this game. And it was almost like that was the moment. I had 1 second of thinking, yes. And he went the other way. And within a second, Harry Kane spitting in the back of the net for 2 each. And that's the draw that I'd wanted before. I would just take a draw before the game. And here it was absolutely gutting. There was beating France home and away in the Euros, the 2008 Euros, being equalising against Italy as well in the final game in that group, and then the Italians getting the most ridiculous free kick I've ever seen in my life, and scoring from it while we tried to work out why they'd been given a foul against us. 2-1 up on Poland in the qualifiers for Euro 2016 after beating Ireland at Parkhead. I was at that game. I think, did we draw at Lansdowne Road? Did we draw away to the Republic of Ireland? And we're really unlucky, losing by the odd goal against the Germans, home and away. And here we were beating Poland, but Ireland have beaten the Germans. They beat the Germans. They drew them, I think, in Germany, and then they beat them in Dublin that night. And then just at that Lewandowski, an absolute car crash of an equaliser that they scored the last kick of the ball. We still had a game to go against Gibraltar and the Faroes, in Faro. The Faroes also make me think of World Cup disasters, under Bertie Vogts anyway, qualifying disasters. But that was you get your hopes up and it gets brutalised. This is the way it happens with Scotland, and they did it again last Saturday night. Fuck, we look ready. We look up for it. We look efficient. We look like we could be what we've been in the Nations League, which is the true vehicle of our return to major finals. We've been dour, canny, bloody difficult to beat, and dangerous. Just always dangerous. Players, we were playing the percentages in the Nations League. I cried during last Saturday's national anthem, the second verse of the national anthem that went a cappella. It's so corny, and Flower of Scotland is such a dour song as well, such a maudlin song. I didn't know why. I couldn't work out why I'd got a bit tearful, but I got a bit choked up and I couldn't properly sing. And I locked it down so tight, I think, that it took me a week to realise that was me actually feeling the joy of being back in the World Cup. Because I'm so almost phobic about Scotland being in the World Cup. Having to go through those 3 games, having to go through what I've been through, and it's always the minnow. It's always the one team in the group that's supposed to be smaller than us. It's supposed to be worse than us. That's where it always goes wrong, and it's usually the first game, and it's the same again this time. It's Haiti in the first game. But I've been so kind of brutalised by what happened any time I have watched Scotland the World Cup finals, even though it was nearly 3 decades ago, that I've missed out the fact that to be back there is properly joyous. It's properly lovely. And then watching us do something that we so rarely do anymore, winning a friendly. We hardly win friendlies for a start, and we won 2 in a row. We do it against a CONMEBOL nation, against a South American nation, against Bolivia. Jesus, fuck you, Scotland. Fuck you for making me believe again. Wales and Toulouse versus Russia in Euro 2016. It's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like that. I watched that. Another beautiful stadium, Toulouse Elliptical Stadium, and Wales, who'd already qualified. I mean, they hadn't been in a tournament since 1958, but that was a World Cup, and they did get to the quarterfinals of that. So they'd only been to one major tournament at that point, Wales, but they'd already got through the first round group stage. It's something Scotland never do. And here they were, needing to win this game to make sure they went through to the next round of Euro 2016, and they were winning 3-0. Aaron Ramsey's playing. I'd seen Aaron Ramsey a couple of years earlier scoring a penalty against Scotland at Hampden on a snowing Friday night, and the next day it was a snowing lunchtime kick-off the next day because Rangers were in the 3rd division. We couldn't cancel our game because the internationals, and I'm standing in a deserted, freezing East Enclosure watching us draw 0-0 with Stirling Albion live on Setanta. I think a brutal weekend, but here was Wales, the team that Scotland have put out World Cups in the qualifying rounds, in the qualifying tournament, and they're 3-0 up and cruising. Their fans are singing. It was a magical match. They got to savour the moment. Going through to the next round, I'm thinking, that's Wales. How can that not be us? How can that not be Scotland that ever does that? And we're not going to be stroking it about in Foxborough versus Brazil. 3-0 up. Sorry, in Miami against Brazil. 3-0 up into the next round already, playing at a canter. But by Christ, it made me realise that game 10 years ago, watching Wales against Russia. It made me realise again how much I need it, how much I need to see this. And not even to be there. I've seen Scotland at a major finals. When I saw that, I was at the game where Patrick Schick scored for the halfway line against us at Hampden in the finals of Euro 2020, and played in 2021. But I was doing it Euro 96 as well. I didn't see Scotland in that, but I'd ticket. My mate and I, we'd bought our tickets before the tournament kicked off, and we had the we were at France against the Netherlands in the quarterfinals at Anfield. Our tickets are 2 seats with the back row, the Kop. But a week before, we knew we were going to all these games. We knew every game that we were going to. We did just know who the teams were. As the rounds were progressing, which teams we were going to see. And we're in Sheffield, with digs in Sheffield to go and see the Spain. Seen a lot of games at Hillsborough, a lot of games at Elland Road, and we'd just seen Spain beating Romania to go through to the next round at Elland Road, and we're driving back to Sheffield. We stopped at a pizza place, and the commentary's on for Scotland against. We couldn't get back in time to get a telly and that, but the commentary's on for Scotland are 1-0 up at Villa Park, and England are winning 4-0 against the Dutch, and that's it. We're going to see Scotland the first time they ever get through the first round of a major tournament, and it's going to be at Anfield, which would be absolutely magical with all its associations with the Scotland national team. And we're going to be there, and we're going to be playing France, the old alliance. That's just going to be and then David Seaman lets it through his legs, and it doesn't happen. I don't need to be there anymore. I don't need to be there. But I just need it more than ever. It's not about me. I just need it to happen in my life. We get back into the finals tournaments, and then when the Euros became so big, we almost couldn't fail. We couldn't help getting back into finals tournaments, and now the World Cup's so big, so many teams go out at the group stage. So few teams go out at the group stage. We can do that too. We could just do the third place thing, whatever. Just get through. There's only 16 teams going out the round of 32. The whole World Cup, the last World Cup, consisted of 32 teams in entirety. That's the second round. There's only 16 teams get eliminated in the first round of this World Cup. After the entire group stage, we can go back to my base ambition for Scotland after 28 years and realise that at least the third place thing, the third place qualifies thing, people are talking about it as if this is a new thing. This is an option. It was an option for us in, I think, the last two Euros we were in, obviously, and also the World Cup in 86 and 90 at least, and it was Uruguay both times. You know, Ernie Walker, scum of world football, Uruguay drawn 0-0, whereas they'd get beat 6-1 by the Danes in that group. But they go through into the next round, the Uruguayans, and we finished bottom of the group. And then in the next World Cup, that was 86 and 90, Italia 90, Uruguay weren't in the same group as us, but Sweden finished bottom of that group. Costa Rica finished top of the group. And they finished second, so they went through with Brazil. Costa Rica went through. They finished second. It was in Brazil that Costa Rica finished top of the group. But they go through with Brazil, Costa Rica. Sweden finished bottom of the group. We're third, and it was a Uruguay-South Korea game, which was somewhere like Verona. Uruguay against South Korea. We needed, I think, a draw or whatever it was. Anyway, we were there. If Uruguay didn't win that game, we were going through. We were going through to the next round. By virtue of a third place finish. I don't know if it was a draw that Uruguay needed and they were losing, or if they needed to win the game, but whatever it was, the goal they required came in the last minute, and it was Daniel Fonseca that scored the goal, and that was us out. So Uruguay got to do his 2 World Cups in a trot and painful style. I don't know. I want patterns. I like, kind of never overarching kind of symmetry. I like even numbers rather than odd numbers. There's probably some sort of Brazilian fat 57-year-old podcaster just now over in Brazil saying, 5 World Cups, that's a really messy number. I want 6. 6 is a nice even number. I want, obviously I've won the Jules Rimet 3 times. Let's win the FIFA World Cup, the other version of the trophy. Let's win that 3 times. They lost to Jules Rimet. They got to keep it, and then they lost the thing, didn't they? The Brazilians, but let's get to win this one. It's different levels. But me who's never seen the Brazil national team in the flesh, who's only ever seen International Porto Alegre in a summer Ibrox International Tournament 1987 summer friendly tournament. I want Scotland to go from an odd number of World Cup finals matches. We've played 23 in total to an even number. The only way we can do that this summer is to get 4 games this summer, take it to 27. In fact, if we get put out in the group stage, that'll be 26. That is an even number, 26. What I want. I always make mistakes when it comes to the patterns. When it comes to the statistical trivia claims. What I want is us to average exactly 3 games per finals tournament. We played 3 games at each of the 4 Euros we've been involved in. We've played 3 games at all the World Cups we've played except 1954. We only got 2 group games in that one. So I want Scotland to get a precise average of 3 matches per finals, and the way to do that is to get in my 13th World Cup, watching it on the telly, and Scotland's 13th major finals is 1 more game than usual. Just 1 more. Scotland being perfectly average is all I dare dream of just now. It's all I've dreamed of my entire Scotland watching life. We should be winning international tournaments. That's my desire. That's what I've wanted always. But what we've needed since the end of the Second World War is for Scotland just to be perfectly average. Game 4. Bring it on. Bring it on, Steve Clarke. Good luck, Scotland. And good luck to every fan, player and referee who attends any game in the USA. When the Mexican cartels can guarantee you better safety than the US authorities, I salute your bravery for going to games in the States, and I hope it's duly rewarded. Be safe, folks. Okay, just quickly do some Rangers stuff, some admin. We'll try to go to the Rangers. We'll try to go to the club way of things. We'll try to go to the domestic way of things. But Rangers, we've got a new away kit, which is white with blue shorts and white socks with a blue fold. And it's a kind of off-white, and a lot of folk don't like it. That's big news. Liam Kelly, he's re-signed or signed an extension to his contract. He's staying. Currently, Scotland's, I'd say, third choice international goalkeeper. Fair dues. I'm assuming he's going to be the backup goalkeeper. I don't know if Jack Butland's still going to be around at Ibrox. And is there anything else? Danny Röhl, our manager, our head coach, said RB Leipzig want him. And that's his alma mater, the RB thing. Jurgen Klopp at the head of that. I wouldn't be surprised if Danny Röhl went, and I don't think any of us are desperately bothered. I want Danny Röhl to stay. I think he should stay, but I feel that it's been set up behind him. It's all been set up behind him as a head coach. There's a structure there which, with Marti, the chairman at Leeds, vice chairman at Rangers, has close up with the 49ers. It's not the San Francisco Bay Area Stadium. It's the Levi Stadium. Marti built that thing for the San Francisco 49ers. We've got the expertise. They've been getting their consultants in after getting rid of Patrick Stewart, and Kevin Thelwell have our expert owners. So I think there's stuff going on in the background that's kind of set up for it to be quite a smooth transition. They'll have somebody probably from the RB world, Red Bull sponsoring Leeds United. They'll probably have somebody ready to come in very much the Danny Röhl vein. But I would like it to be Danny Röhl. Like I say, there's a whole lot of banter online about two sets of supporters who don't want him. Rangers fans don't want Danny Röhl, and the RB Leipzig fans don't want Danny Röhl. It's maybe just rumour time. I would say that's certainly more attractive an option to him than Wolfsburg. That was previously rumoured to be going to, but I would still be quite kind of surprised if he actually went. So that's it. We'll see how that pans out. And also, and I think it's worth us mentioning this on it's a Scotland podcast, an international football podcast during this summer, but over the next 5 weeks. But Martin O'Neill is staying as Celtic manager. He's going to be Celtic manager next season, and I say good. I do say good. I want it to be us who gets him hunted. It's a creepy old cheat as far as I'm concerned, Martin O'Neill, and I want us to hunt him as we did in 2005 for the second time in his career. When I saw it, I don't want to disappear off into the distance. I mean, I don't want the guy to die. He's like 74-year-old because we never get the bloody end of it back then. But it would teach him a lesson for pretending to be a martyr for so long to actually end up becoming one. But I told you when he took the post from Brendan Rodgers back earlier last season that he would end up pressuring referees before the end of the season, pressuring officials hysterically. He's been doing that for all through kind of 2025, 2026. But this time, 20 years since his last time cosplaying as a real Celtic kind of man, he's found that the foundations built by himself in the manager's dugouts and Neil Lennon on the pitch and Peter Lawwell in the director's box back at the start of this century have been steadily built upon to the point where the refs are already kind of submitting to his team, and so now he can just come in and add a lovely new touch. The former forensic lawyer of 2000 to 2005, the kind of forensic lawyer for the prosecution who was calling out all the biases that everybody else was scared to and that weren't actually there. Now he's got an equally kind of bent defence lawyer pantomime going on, where every offence Celtic commits, he can't quite see, and he's got 10,000 Celtic fans in an 8,000 capacity stand pouring all over the top of him, and he can't see anything that they're doing wrong as he stands there on the pitch and they're all running round about him. But somehow from there he can see up the other end of the pitch to the other penalty box, and he can see the few dozen Rangers fans that are coming onto the park to approach, and he knows that's the real problem, and he offers really, really biased opinions, unbiased characterisations, not about what went wrong that day. He's one of the guys, Martin. I think he's a dangerous character. I don't say this about Rangers, about Celtic supporters. I'm not saying this, but he just plays to the galleries in a horrible way that's pretty dangerous for football-going life, I would say. And I think the English, in Scotland, nothing's been validated until the English are talking about it, and them just making jokes about Celtic being basically having the referees in their back pocket. That's been nice for us to see, for somebody else to actually recognise what's been going on. I don't think it's back pocket stuff. I think it's just so much of it is subjective refereeing, and I think that when Martin O'Neill is boasting in his pressers about phoning the head of refereeing, phoning Willie Collum as we went into the post-split fixtures and saying to him, well, I just hope there's no dodgy refereeing decisions going on, i.e. I hope there's nothing going against Celtic, and then they get the decisions that went against Hearts, against Motherwell at Fir Park, then Celtic, it went for Celtic at Fir Park, went for Celtic against us at Parkhead, and the way that game ended, the last game of the season, I think it's pretty good to know that other folk can see how we see it as supporters of non-Celtic clubs. There's that, and then the fact that Martin O'Neill comes in instead of Robbie Keane is exposing a massively kind of racist element of the Celtic support, which I don't mean it's a massive element, just an element of the Celtic support, which is, we always knew is there. It's so committed to anti-Semitism, it even extends to them boycotting a kind of former striker of theirs, a guy who played for them before, and something Martin O'Neill never did. And a Republic of Ireland legend, the greatest ever goal scorer for the Republic of Ireland national team. It's as much about what, I mean, Robbie Keane doesn't get a job. It's as much about what Israel are doing to Palestine as your concerns about everyone paying the amount of tax. That's what it was all about in 2012. The Green Brigade were as silent on October the 7th, 2023 as their dads were loud about kind of pre-Pacific shelf Celtic boards under-reporting huge crowds at Parkhead's days as a three sides of terrace. I mean, they weren't silent about it. They're getting your Celtic fans would always say to me, it's 40,000 in the papers, Alec, but I was there, it was more like 70,000 there. What a night, what a support we've got, looking back on it, you were shafting the taxman the same as us in 2012, but that's when you get moral about it. It's just a bigotry, and I'm saying this full knowledge at the start of the pod that Rangers fans were taking part and promoting the nonsense that was happening in various city centres on, was it Monday night, Tuesday night, whenever it was, the Tommy Robinson stuff. So it's just something that needs to be said. I think Martin O'Neill is one of the guys who appeals to that segment of the support of any club he's at. And I would rather Celtic get a better manager. I would rather they had Mourinho or something like that, and although he would obviously get pretty controversial as well, just a better technical manager who will win more stuff with them than O'Neill, just to have O'Neill not there. But it's gone too far. He did it again, like I said he would do. That's why I predicted it straight away. I lost a lot of Celtic fans who watched my pod by saying, I hate the fact O'Neill's back at Celtic. He's a prick for this, that and the other reason. And I just had to say it then, so it wouldn't look like sour grapes when Celtic eventually won the league under him, and they did, and it happened that way. So it's gone too far. I want him. I want it to be us. They get rid of him. I would like to see him sacked between October and January next season, because we're running away with the league, and he goes out blaming it on officials. That's a kind of sour note. It's something I don't like having to say. But I've got to be honest about these things. I should be more concerned with our own head coach, who that's going to be. I'm not. It's just as long as it's somebody who's good enough. I'm all about Scotland at the World Cup. Enjoy the opening ceremony, folks, and I will talk to you much more briefly. Maybe just before the Scotland game actually kicks off. Get a wee kind of preview. There'll certainly have a post-match reaction to Scotland against Haiti sometime on Sunday evening, probably. But there'll be intermittent pods through this World Cup, and this has got to be the last one that's just as long as this. Sorry, folks. Enjoy the World Cup.